I welcome misfits to this episode of Midnight Ranting. When the rocks cry out. Oh, it's okay, Grandpa. It's going to be okay. Tonight, we're wondering if stones can cry. Or rather, does the Bible provide us with an accurate historical foundation? No, it fell apart.
We believe we came from a rock.
Again.
We do. We came from rocks.
You silly atheists think that we came from rock soup. It goes from this to lizard to grandpa. I think that's the exact how it goes.
Now, crying rocks, there's no problem with that. That's fine, but yeah.
No, that's God. Science, James. That's science. But come join James W. Oh my. Myself, Amy Newman, and our special guest host, Pat Lowinger. Woohoo!
Hey everybody. Hey Amy, here, James.
Thanks for coming on, Pat. This will be fun.
Yes, thank you for coming on for the fun. As we try our best to have a one-on-one conversation with some rocks.
More productive than with some of these Christians.
Woohoo! That's right. I want to thank everyone out there on the intertubes. If you have your booster shot or at least 2 of your vaccine shots, get your 5G ready. Boop, 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 boop. Oh,
what?
I'm connected. Feels good. Fight the back. That's scary.
Get smart TVs. We got smart Amy.
That's right. Smart.
She's more
Amy.
Machine now than human.
Now, I still walk into walls, but I connect directly to lights. So, the ups, the downs.
Wait till the chemtrails get you, then you'll be screwed.
Damn you, chemtrails. But yes, if you're feeling fancy, reminds me of King Shark now that I do this. Big mustache. Looks
Dr.
perfect.
Evil.
Well, that too. If you're feeling fancy, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe. Boop, and hit that bell icon.
Cyborg type.
Sending love. So you can get reminders for our premieres or to join our live streams. That's right. Hello, chat.
Hey, guys.
We are a skeptic channel, including the 3 schmucks you see before you. Though, after the video, in which we'll see the other side of this topic, we'll be opening up the floodgates, or rather, the open mic. So anyone can tell us what's on their mind about the topic. They'll also get their own brief opening and closing statements. Atheist or theist, liberal or conservative, come as you are, just on the sheets every time. I use bleach every time.
What about the rocks? Is that okay? Come on the rocks.
Oh my God, it's okay. As long as the rocks consent. Grandpa may be into that. He
Come on the rocks. That sounds like
at the end of life.
Sounds like a name for a drink at a bar.
That's right, baby. But you can also, as I scream, find our Patreon page at patreon.com/Amy Newman.
Go plant the seed on our Patreon page.
Helps us make even more fun content, and at least we don't sell the invisible product That's right, baby.
There you go.
Including awesome Patreons like KO Champ, who I'm sure is going to be, I think, in Love and Thunder. Yeah, baby, new movie coming out. But love you, KO Champ.
New movie.
But also, that's right, Phase 4, baby. But also Oz from The Atheist, Roundtable, and Tang
network
Gang. Yo, Connected Atheist. In fact, would you like to be more connected to Atheist? Well, there
There's
is
a
an
fee for
event going on. Better, because we're looking for better conversations. We're looking to do it better in the non-believer community. Come to Better. Tickets on sale now.
You better come.
Tart.live, Tang.live, everything.live. Frig it, we'll do it live. But yes. Also, Ian Davenport.
Ian. We'll be on Facebook any minute now.
Video game movies that do well kind of go in and out. Everything was Scott Pilgrim. Now everything's Free Guy at the moment. But we're doing well. Yeah, video game movies in Davenport. But also, we are talking, oh man, tonight it's going to be James, it's going to be myself, and it's going to be a grumpy old watching Pat go. But that's why we brought Pat on tonight. So sending love, company. Woohoo! But also, 3 princesses in 1. We are bringing the female skeptics out. Hell yeah, baby. Diana Smith.
Diana. Skeptics of all kinds, all flavors.
We
don't discriminate.
Very important. Especially since I hate to go all female power, but after, oh my goddess, after reading so much of the Bible, feel like it could use a little bit more feminist flair. I feel like, I don't know, they could not treat women as property.
You feel like you should be in the kitchen right now making something to eat for a guy somewhere, right?
Well, I generally speaking think, I don't know, would be hot if a guy made me a sandwich. You know, could be, try it out, who knows? Who knows?
Lost your salad.
Right, baby.
Toss the salad.
At the end of the day, I think what we can all agree on is Art Sandwich is amazing. I mean, that I think we can all come together on.
It's like, that reminds me of the conservative Oklahoma State Senator who is serving 15 years in prison right now for being caught with an underage child in a motel room. So when you're Ralph Shorty and you are Oklahoma State Senator, anti-gay Republican, and you've got an underage male prostitute in the room with you, and the police are knocking on the door, and you open up the door, and you're wearing a shirt that says, has a Bible verse on it, and says, "Now go make me a sandwich." It was like that verse in Ephesians, like women subjugate yourselves to your husband, something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's always the ones that thou protest a little bit too much that get caught in Grindr accounts, or worse, as we see with this guy and the Catholic Church. And yeah. Whew. But then they,
enough cringe to go around.
But then they try to throw actual rocks, or at least they actually don't, because we have neutered the, I'm going to use their word, the Jado-Christian, which doesn't actually exist. But we've mostly neutered them to where they don't throw stones anymore, even though their Bible, I'm pretty sure, says, hey, you know those abominations over there? Grab a stone.
Now they complain about Starbucks cups, so I think that's.
I know. Oh my Jesus! The war on Christmas.
They're moving in the right direction.
No one cares about. No one gives a fuck. Becky, get your cup of coffee and get out of my way. That is all anyone cares about. If you are paying more than 3 seconds attention to what is around the cup, this is how much attention like something around the cup deserves. Any longer than that, okay? You can have the enjoyment. 3 seconds. Anything longer. Get out of the line. That's all I'm asking. Oh my God.
I mean, maybe one day we'll be able to say because you can't say Merry Christmas anymore without getting attacked.
That's the other war.
Attacked by mobs of secular atheists that
that's right.
will just beat the crap out of you if you dare utter those words, right?
They hold guns up to you. When you say, you can't even get the Christmas out. You say Merry, and they say, how are you going to finish that? What do you, Merry times?
Mary Tyler Moore?
No one cares. Say Merry Christmas. Say Happy Holidays. I will generally, whatever you say to me, I'm just going to say, cool story. I'll either say it back or say cool story or happy. Whatever is the happy good times feeling that gets you, we get through this social conversation. But speaking of fantastic people and conversations, oh, the person with us tonight, he went an actual archaeologist. It's almost an offense, really is, when you hear people just talk out their expertise. You travel very lightly, and just I feel like this entire video is just offensive, or it should be offensive to Pat. But we, on the other hand, love Pat. Woohoo! And you should check out both of our
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's got a new channel, Discovering Ancient History with Pat Lowinger. Yeah.
Go check out
the second video.
You don't want to be caught not being a subscriber to that channel. You don't want to.
If you enjoy kind of seeing, if you like looking at archaeological sites that with minimal camera work and marginal editing on the videos, then it is the site for you. Yeah. But I mean, it does. I do get to go to some sites that really are not. You're never going to find in a reference source. You're never going to find them on a map if you don't know the area and kind of like the topography, and if you're not willing to do a 3 to 4 mile hike straight uphill, sometimes you're never gonna find some of the sites that I was fortunate enough to survey this last summer. So it might interest some folks.
Yeah, some folks. Yeah, don't be that guy. Don't be that one guy who's not down with.
And Pat, I know I have your channel in a banner, but I'm not sure which one because it can't quite be labeled yet. So send me that one more time, and I will link it in chat. But yes, we're sending love to Pat, and we basically, in fact, I said 3 schmucks. It's really 2 schmucks and an academic. We really have
honorary schmucks.
What are those? The old people that used to just grime at movies. They were like Muppets.
Yeah, the Muppets in the Opera.
I forget what the 2 old guys were. We have those, and then we have Muppets, a teacher here to really combat the stupid here. It's going to be a great time. And all right.
I'm okay. There are a lot of guys that could be doing a better job on this than me. You can afford me because I'm free. That's.
Oh, baby. I'm going to say that's hot. But yes. Also, we are sending love to Pat, but also we are gathering all the skeptics. And the funny thing about skeptics, generally speaking, not only is our mantra, I don't know, if you ask me, but we also just seem to ask for a little bit of empirical evidence.
It would be nice once in a while. Once in a while.
As they say in Scotland, a wee bit.
A wee bit of evidence, maybe?
But that's cheating. That's cheating. That's using the wrong tool, guys.
Come on, Amy. If God came up right behind you and tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm God," you still wouldn't believe he exists.
Exactly. I'd be like, no, person right in front of me that's speaking to me, you don't exist. Please move, as I do to all figures of my life or something.
To be fair, if God came up and tapped Amy's shoulder on her shoulder, it would probably be in a bathhouse. So
that's probably true.
Well, I'm just saying, if you look at how Jesus was, he was hanging out. I'm not saying
all the dudes.
I'm probably a little bit too hormoned at this point, but hey, you know, when I was 18, 19, right before. But well, he not just Dale. Sending love to Dale Pastel.
Thank you, Dale.
And it is. I don't know why. I don't know why empirical evidence tends to be the one that is cheating. I don't know why they have to use an older tool. I don't know why it has to be philosophy. I appreciate philosophy. But I don't know. What do you think, Dale? What do you think, guys?
I mean, faith is probably the best tool, right? You just choose to believe something because you just choose to believe it. And that's it. That's easy. It's simple. You don't have to think about it.
Oh, and evidence can be a little bit muddied, right? Particularly when we talk about archaeological evidence. You know, it's subject to interpretation, you know, different than literary evidence, you know, archaeological evidence.
Right.
We're talking about material culture. And I will tell you that you can have two pretty fairly accomplished archaeologists look at the same thing and not come up to the same conclusion. You know, they may have general ideas that are similar, but they may not exactly interpret it the same way.
Right.
And that's why archaeology is sometimes referred to as an interpretive field, less than a, you know, highly evidence. I mean, we deal a lot with evidence, but some of that evidence is, you know, the conclusions are interpretive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's how things work, you know, like.
But even then, your thing. Oh no, continue. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that's Chris. They're always saying how science changes. Look, one year science said this. 25 years later, they say something that's like 90% that, just a little different. Well, yeah, because we're always collecting new data and updating models and trying to make it more accurate, more better. Everything is provisional. Knowledge is provisional. You know, everything is built on something else and subject to revision when better information becomes available.
Right.
And I just want to send up Pat's channel, so go check that out because we're trying to get him to 100. Get him that sexy name, baby, right down there. Sending love, in fact, to everyone in chat. I'll be saying hi to everyone in a second. But we are saying thank you so much, Dale. And also, we are looking at this. I don't know. Does that look like a thick earth to you guys? Looks kind of round.
The arms and legs are kind of I don't know what to make of those.
Well, the funny thing is, this is an anthropomorphized earth. And religion really has, in my opinion, a lot of anthropomorphization. They always say, you silly atheists, you need to stop saying that it is a sky daddy and it is all this stuff. But, I mean, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. I mean, it is very much a father figure who, at least in the Old Testament, comes down and kicks butt and takes names.
He talked to 70 elders last time. He came down and talked to them
one-on-one.
That is what it said. But then no one has
shiny
seen
cloud.
Shiny cloud. But yes, that's right. I don't know what's with the freaking cloud. It almost anthropomorphized cloud, like a pet cloud. Only the Bible.
He wrestled with Jacob, but
don't we all?
Well, that was
yes,
Elion, but still.
I can just see a bunch of ancient Hebrews in the desert squinting up at the sun as Moses says, "You see God? He's right there. He's on the cloud." And they're like, "Yeah, I see him. Sure." You know.
Oh no, it's the cloud. Definitely. All right, no one let Moses next to the burning plants anymore.
Charlton Heston. Peace be upon him.
Peace be upon him. Reese's Pieces be upon everyone.
Well,
right. But thank you. What was?
It was Italian wrestling with Jacob. That's where they pin you and grab your genitalia. As the famous Catholic priest said when the parents were asking him, "Why are you wrestling with our kids and grabbing their genitalia?" "Oh, it's just Italian wrestling. It's just fun. Don't worry about it." Makes sense, right?
It makes sense. Of course. Also, ladies and gentlemen, religion. Though really, religion that they get away with it, because mostly we put those people into jail. But when you're religious, it seems like they just get passed around, as Bill Barr said, like the whales that bite someone at SeaWorld.
Oh,
just gotta pass ship them somewhere else. Ship them somewhere else. It'll be fine. Oh my lordy. Part of why we're anti-theists. We woohoo. But not generally for all theists, because it's always what a tricky label once we get into the antis. But to oppose just the general religions, and if you think it is a superstition, which I do think it is, then I believe it can.
Doesn't mean they're all bad people. There are very good people who are religious.
That is
the idea is
that's the problem with superstitions, is that is such a wide-ranging category. That is like the top level. I mean, you can go from the hippy dippy to just everything is about love and acceptance, to the most fundamentalist, to where everything is really about order and
Taliban kind of
maybe either even judgment.
Yeah.
The
Taliban, the extremists like that.
Yeah, it is. They're just a radical sect of fundamentalism. You know, I struggle with stuff like that because, I think the vast majority of Muslims, of theists in general, are fantastic people. And then I would say even the fundamentalists are fantastic people. I don't even want to disclude them now that I'm saying it. What happens is, because I'll say there truly are, the Westboro Baptist Church, let's split this in half and paint with this small
fringe fundamentalists.
But the worst thing about some sects of religion, first of all, kinky, is that you want good people to do good, normal. You want bad people to do bad, it's kind of what we expect.
Right.
But you want good people to do evil. Ladies and gentlemen, religion. And I am paraphrasing here, but my wordy.
What drives people to fly planes into buildings or strap explosives onto them and run into a crowd? Only religion. Well, usually religion. Yeah.
And a lot of times, or thousands of years ago, it was another religion with a sword. Everyone has their time in the sun to seemingly spread, the true religion.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're sending love to the lead hyena of the pack. Boom, 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 boom.
Scott Duke.
Scott Duke.
The Duke of Hazzard. Just one Duke.
Duke of Hazzard. Woo. And we're just trying to reform hyenas in general. That's really what we're trying to do because they're adorable. Part of Carnivora, the order, and they're amazing. So, love you, Scott. And last but not least, our thespian and awesome biblical skull, Regos.
Regos.
Ha! Once again,
Bible
contractually
study.
obligated to finish that song. But yes, our Bible studies, go check them out. We're in Numbers, the fourth book of the Bible. We're cruising along, baby.
Cruising right along.
But thank you, Regos. In fact, thank you to all of our Patreons. You are who enable us to make this fun content along with our awesome mods and viewers like you.
Look at Ralph doing a meanie there in chat.
Oh my! Oh, I'll look in chat in a second. Sending love to all of you. But I do have to say,
he's inside the snake, Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah. In the snake.
In the snake.
Well, are the snakes filled with stonks? No.
Not that kind of snake.
When the rocks cry out. We normally then thank our drug dealers for the amazing acid. However, in the Bible, the burning bushes talk back. So it does make one wonder how historical of a text this sacred script could possibly be. And the bar is high because many believers would tell you it's the most accurate history book ever written. Humbleness being their best feature. Some even go a step further, wanting to replace the secular history books in public school with the good news, which would only set us back another 1,000 years. Though I hear the Inquisition was on fire back in the day. Or the people, anyway. But enough about actual history. Is the Bible a foundation for which we can rely on? Well, no. In fact, most of the prophets in the Old Testament have no scholarly backing for existing. Adam or Eve, Noah, and Moses did not exist. These are instead stories of oral tradition. That's what she said. Which would eventually become canonized. And once pen hit page, fundamentalists were born. So it didn't matter what new information we learned in the past few thousand years, or that most of these myths share lineage with the various other religions around them. We're now stuck with creationists saying Noah's boat can be found. The Garden of Eden is a great tourist location, and it's historical that a man lived inside a giant fish, which I'm fairly sure is a Pixar movie. Archaeologists would love to have these types of findings. However, the Torah wasn't supposed to be a history text in the first place. This was a nomadic group of people trying to make up stories in the desert. I give them mad props for doing so thousands of years ago. However, when it comes to characters like Moses, when he brings the tablets down to us, we can ask ourselves, do the rocks cry? However, the answer seems to be no. Thank you. Woo-hoo! And all right, we're going James and then Pat. And then we're going to have a little fun with the other side before we go into the open mic. But James, how are you doing tonight? And are you ready to have some Rocky fun?
I've been waiting for this all day. So I came across this video a couple of days ago after we went. And we're always looking for new material, new things to make an episode about. And the pastor that is going to be joining us in our hot seat here today made a video, and he made a lot of comments about archaeology and ancient history. I'm like, do we know anybody who comes on the channel who knows a lot about archaeology and ancient history? Somebody who maybe is an archaeologist? So yeah, so why don't we bring Pat on here? So I just want to thank him again a lot for coming on and sharing us some of your knowledge. So yeah, let's get going. Amy's out. She'll be right back. While we wait for her, you have anything you want to say before we get started, Pat? You're on mute.
No, I'm not. So I always try to give a quick reference to anybody who we're going to talk today a lot about biblical archaeology, what it was, where it stems from, what the current state of the term and the discipline is at. And if I was asked, first of all, I don't want to read a big book, Pat. I want to read something short, 100 and some pages, something like that, to get an understanding of when we're talking about biblical archaeology, what are we talking about? I would point people to Oxford University's Press, a very short introduction series. These are like little pocket books. I don't know if I have any here that I can show you, and I don't. But I typically suggest them to students. They're like introductory college level reading. And the one I would point you to is Eric Klein's Biblical Archaeology, a very short introduction. It's a fairly new book. I think it's 2009, 2010. You can pick it up for less than $10. Not a lot of pictures, and the pictures they do have are black and white illustrations, but it's a really good source. And I'm going to be talking a lot about archaeology today. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. If I use some terminology that maybe you're not familiar with, I'll try to explain that. But I was asked today by James to look at this video, and I did. I went through it a couple times, and it's utter rubbish. And let's talk about why. But I won't prejudice you any more than that. So let's go ahead and get started. And thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I think Amy is coming back on. She'll be back in momentarily. There we go. Welcome back, Amy.
And thank you so very much. And all right,
Pat gave his introduction.
I just saw. And all right, with that, we are now going to hand it over to the opposing view. However, we are going to share our lovely commentary on top. And then if you disagree with anything that we say tonight, including what's on the video, you can come tell us. However, while we're watching the video, you can also... Oh, I didn't share sound. I'm a goober. Hold on 1 second. So
this is a new pastor for Amy's hot seat. Last week,
oh baby,
2 weeks ago, we had Creflo Dollar in the hot seat. Last week, we had Kenneth Copeland and Pat Robertson. This is a new one, but he's earned his place in the seat with this video here.
And all right, we're going to start the video. If you agree, disagree, or have any funny comments to say, oh yeah, baby, don't forget to tag either James W. or myself, Amy Newman, in chat, and we will see it and say it up on screen. And all right, we got Pat here to have some fun. Let the fun begin then.
The following is a paid presentation brought to you by Amazing Facts Incorporated.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Coming up next on Amazing Facts Presents...
The record of geology tells us that there was a catastrophic flood. They can't accept that it was the Bible, so they're looking all over the planet saying, which asteroid was it?
For over 40 years, Amazing Facts has been dedicated to sharing God's Word through media. This program features highlights from some of our best television broadcasts. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition.
If these are their best broadcasts, I would hate to see their worst.
Today's presentation is an excerpt from the Sacramento Central Study Hour video series.
Good morning, friends. Today we got a very interesting lesson. It's lesson number 5, When the Rocks Cry Out. And it's dealing with the subject of how archaeology plays a key role in validating and confirming the dependability of the Bible. And there's a lot of scriptures it's based on, and we'll be sharing those as we go. We have a memory verse I'd invite you to say with me, and it's Hebrews chapter 11.
You got to read this along with it, maybe?
5. Hebrews 11, verse 24 and 25.
Oh my.
And if you're ready, we'll say that together. You ready? By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Now you'll wonder, what does that have to do with archaeology? Stay with us.
Nothing.
We're going to be talking about that in a minute.
Oh my.
Archaeology, the study of what you might find in the ancient record, in the ruins from history, maybe ancient writings, tells us something about ancient history. And especially in the early 19th century, the 1800s, more and more criticism began to arise about the dependability of the Bible. They called it, higher criticism. And they began to just question. It was a time of spiritual darkness. In one sense. They began to questioning the Bible. The Bible just
not skeptics.
A team of bamboozlers who tried to fool everybody, and the dates that they claimed these things happened didn't really happen in the places.
Also, Pat, I will say, if you ever want to call out bullshit on him, feel free to just say.
Just jump in and
normally, you can take your pick, but foreskin or hay or this is bullshit, and then we'll start.
Jump in, whenever you need to.
And fabricated, and
you're on mute, Pat.
A lot of suspicion and
He's just ready to
cynicism developed about the Bible and its authenticity. And they began to question everything. Maybe there weren't, we don't have a lot of history about David and Abraham and Moses. Matter of fact, we don't even believe that there was writing, that men knew how to write back in the days of Moses. I mean, after all, the Egyptians were using cartoons. Keep in mind, they had not yet deciphered the Rosetta Stone.
Cartoons.
No.
They weren't calling them cartoons. They knew what hieroglyphics were. They just couldn't read them.
And this pisses me off so much because he looks at another language and her like, primitive language. It's like, no, very complex language that you are just now tossing aside. That okay.
And antiquarians and archaeologists, antiquarians being what we called people that did it before archaeology, right? When it was a new discipline in the 1800s and 1900s, right? Early 1900s. Antiquarian studies really was a field. And when they first started encountered Egyptian hieroglyphics, no one thought it was like just simple rock art, right? They knew it was a complex language.
It had meaning.
But again, it's highly developed. I'm not an Egyptologist, but I know a few if we ever want to have some on.
Ooh, absolutely. And all right, we're jumping back in fun.
Times, and they couldn't figure out what hieroglyphics were. And so they said, how could Moses have written all these things? And they began to just cast suspicion and doubt on the authenticity of the Bible in many respects. But as man began to dig, the more he dug, the more the shovel confirmed the truth of the Bible.
Really?
We have in Luke 19:40. I don't have a lot of verses in our study today, but who's got a microphone?
Thank goodness for that.
Who will read that for me? Luke 19, verse 40.
And he answered and said unto them, I tell you that.
Also, I mean, I'm not hating. I'm just a little light roasting. I do love the crowd work. I know that deep down they all want to be comedians. They all want to be, I don't know, some sort of other entertainment. But hey, I can't diss crowd work.
Should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out.
Thank you. Now, some of you remember this story that the adversaries of Jesus were telling him to ask the people to be quiet, and he said that if these should hold their peace, even the stones would cry out. Prophecy must be fulfilled. Do stones speak?
No.
The 10 Commandments were written on what?
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the question we are asking tonight. The big questions we're asking on this.
Also, do snakes speak? No. Do donkeys speak? No. So you can just add rocks to the list.
Don't they make fun of us for things coming from rocks? I feel like these are self-fulfilling jokes. That is like a new category. Okay.
They're trolling on multiple levels. They're trolling their own trolling.
I mean, in the Bible, it says the blood of Abel speaketh. So certainly something written speaks. You remember, not only did God write the 10 Commandments on stone, but when the children of Israel crossed into the Promised Land, Joshua was instructed to erect a great big monolith, plaster it, and engrave on this enormous stone the words of the covenant on Mount Gerizim, and they did that. Stones speak, and they put the monument of stones there when they crossed the Jordan River so that they would be a testimony. The stones do speak in that respect, and we're finding out that the deeper that man digs in the ancient world, the biblical lands, the more it validates the authenticity of the Bible, and I think it's fair to say.
What do you think, Pat? Do the more that you dig,
the more you find for the Bible?
To be fair, there have been some parts of the Bible, as far as historical assertions in the Bible, that have been what we call ground truth. That's what we go out and you dig up and you basically prove, or at least it is reasonably asserted it can be something alluded to in the Bible. There have been some archaeological discoveries that you can say support the narrative text found, and even historical assertions found within the Old Testament. I will tell you though that there's many more misses and many more, and when I say misses, just something's not there that should be there, right? But you have a lot more counter evidence, evidence that actually proves that the biblical assertion's wrong. So if you're adding up hits, misses, and contrary evidence, the Bible's definitely losing more than it gains. Each and every time there's an expedition, the sum of total for the Bible is in the losing column.
For every
as a historical text, it doesn't hold up well.
For every one thing you confirm, you probably find 3 or 4 things that are totally off base.
Right. Well, 3 or 4 things you can't give an answer either way, and probably at least that many more that you can say, yeah, this is actually evidence contrary to the Bible.
Yeah.
Or an assertion of the Bible, right?
And I forgot to include it in my intro, but there is historical locations. The classic is, Egypt exists, Babylon, and thus
Babylon.
Just Babylon exists. But once again,
Syria.
Just because a place exists, just because someone will find that New York one day doesn't mean, and they hate this analogy. I can feel them. They're like, oh, Amy, tip your fedora even deeper. But it's like, just because New York exists doesn't mean that Spider-Man is real. But, yeah. And so, yes, there are historical locations in the Bible. Jesus may or may not have been a real man. Muhammad probably was a real man. I would have to ask Pat, Moses. Well,
I don't think. I mean, there are a few historians and a few archaeologists that would, they're a minority. Most, from my reading, and I actually have looked into this. The consensus scholarship is that Moses is a literary device within the Pentateuch, right? So. Serious academics and historians don't find it. And particularly, and this is something I want to let people know before we go in and Pat the archaeologist. Pat's background is Mediterranean archaeology, right? So I am not narrowly focused on the Levant. The Levant is a region I survey. I know generalities about the Levant. I am not, a Bronze Age specialist of the Levant, of which there are people that is their entire life's dedication, right? But, in general terms, questions about archaeology, I can answer those and field those with some confidence. If you want to know about Greece and Rome, that's my wheelhouse, right? So be happy about that. But, there are some things that just to get through your basic coursework, you have to learn, and he's going to cover some of those today, and it's just really bad. But I would use this example. If you want to assert the Bible's true, you have to assert the Iliad, right, is true. The Iliad has characters in it, right? Schliemann, famous archaeologist who discovered Troy and set out to prove Troy is real, was able to identify ancient Troy, and tried to say, is the Iliad got any historical facts in it? And it looks like there's a few things, but all in all, we don't believe Achilles lived. We don't believe Hector lived. We don't believe that many of the characters that are portrayed, not only do we have portrayals of them, we have what they said, what they did, and how they acted, how they fought in battle, and who killed who and raped who and offered who to the gods as a sacrifice. We don't think any of that occurred just because there was some ancient historical memory that Greeks had invaded Upper Anatolia, ancient modern Turkey, and sacked a city there, right? It just it's a similar comparison, but I'm sure this gentleman here would not assert that the Iliad is word for word, jot and tittle correct, although it was believed to be so in antiquity as well, just like the Bible or the Old Testament.
So these things they were long before they were written down. They were oral traditions. They were passed down before some scribe decided to write it down. So it could have had a few things that were real from the original, but a lot of it would have evolved.
That's an important part of it, James. Yeah, some of it is oral transmission and cultural memory. But we also know that as sources are being combined in the Pentateuch, right, we know that some of it's fabricated on the spot, right? Right. Particularly like with some of the later minor prophets. Like we do know that like if you're someone that believes the book of Daniel was written, during the Babylonian captivity, you just you're too credulous really for me to have a conversation with if you're not willing to look at the literary and extra biblical evidence to show that it's not. But, you know, and that's the other problem is Daniel's not just one book written by one person. You have some of it was written in Aramaic, that's a little bit older. Later parts of it written in Hebrew were written in the, the first half of the 2nd century, during what we call the Maccabean period. This isn't arguable anymore in mainstream scholarship, and no one would argue it, but unless you want to, make a point because you're trying to prove the book to be true, quote unquote, given by God.
And okay, we're going to answer a question, woohoo, and then we're going to go back into the opposing view. But feel free to keep on sending us our questions at either James W. or Amy Newman. Da Freak says, I just want to say debunking the flood or Noah, if that were possible, doesn't negate every and all other biblical archaeology, nor negates Jesus Christ in any way whatsoever. Who wants to take the bite first?
Well, I mean, I would just say
take a bite.
If we're told a text is from God, and we can find things in there that are not true demonstrably, why would we have faith that the book is true in other areas that we can't, physically check? So if we can check it out and it fails, why would we assume everywhere else it's going to pass?
And I would just say that this really isn't trying to attack Christianity, though I will say it inadvertently is attacking Christianity just because we're attacking the foundation. Because if you remove Judaism, then I really don't know what the hell Jesus is even there for.
I think it's the strongest argument against Christianity is to just destroy it at the root. Because if the Old Testament's a fabrication, if it's that everything Christianity is built on that, if the foundation falls apart, you don't even have to get to the New Testament. Yeah. There's exactly. No sin.
Right. Well, I would come in saying that actually, I don't care whether or not the Bible's true, the Old Testament. Whether or not some facts in it that are, purported to be historical, if they are actual, then that lets us analyze, some of the historical elements of the text. But yeah, I would say, first of all, debunking the flood narrative, I don't think myself I've ever come on and said that there wasn't a flood in Mesopotamia from where the tradition developed, right? The Noah flood myth, and I call it the Noah flood myth, was taken from possibly actual historical events that occurred in Mesopotamia along the Euphrates. We talked about that in one of the early episodes of Talk Skeptic to Me. There were probably actual flood events that people in antiquity remembered that were then projected through tradition, through the Hebrew tradition with Noah. The important thing to remember that is no one thinks the Noah account actually happened the way the Noah account happened, but is the Noah account probably based on something that was coming out of Mesopotamia, based on an actual event that was mythologized even in Mesopotamia, because Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Atrahasis, these other epics are similar in style and form to the Noah account, preceded by, sometimes as much as 1,000 years. So again, the Noah flood narrative, I don't need to disprove it. I just need to show this an archetype, and the account itself doesn't have divine causation because there's no geological evidence support a worldwide flood. But I don't care that because I don't believe there was a worldwide flood even I don't believe the Epic of Gilgamesh is accurately portraying history either, right? It's a cultural memory and it's a cultural theme, and that's it. It's a mythical tradition with religious overtones.
Mm-hmm. But thank you so much, Pat, for that answer. Thank you so much to Freak for that question, and we're moving forward.
Today, the Bible is the undisputed, most dependable book.
That's quite a claim. That's quite a claim.
Lands. If you ask an honest archaeologist, even the atheists will
wait,
say,
let me go back.
Do we have an honest archaeologist and atheist archaeologist here? Yeah,
I want to hear this claim one more time, because now he's bringing the atheist and
thick.
the archaeologist in here.
He's laying it on thick right here.
Dependable book supplying undisputed Bible, and I think it's fair to say today the Bible is the undisputed, most dependable book supplying history of the Middle East and the Bible lands. If you ask an honest archaeologist, even the atheists will say, while we may not believe in the God of the Bible and the religious aspects of the Bible, we are finding there is no book that provides better history than the Bible. Now,
what do you think?
No book better?
Okay, so this is the issue. Do we have texts that give better historical evidence than the Bible? Absolutely. There's liturgical texts Dr. Josh can talk to about coming out of Assyria. There's actually historical texts, king's lists, and other things written in other places that give pretty good chronological histories, talking about battles, things that occurred that are much more accurate than the Bible. When you're talking about a book, well, some people don't count cuneiform tablets. Cuneiform's not a book, right? Even though they were organized like books. Egyptian papyri aren't books. These are the kind of things where you kind of get in some of the nuance.
Semantics.
It's semantics, but no, the Bible is not the most accurate. There are other books, collection of works that are in a body that we look at as historical sources that are much more accurate. But even what we call the accurate sources are prone to issues of propaganda, particularly look at who's writing it and what they're talking about. It's amazing how all the kings are super awesome, even though they're not super awesome in history. They're just like marginally efficient kings who, are emperors in other time periods.
Right.
But no, the Bible suffers from the same and many worse issues, particularly in issues regarding the fact that it's a history that's also an ethnography, right? It's a ethnogenesis of how these people come into being and what they're, it's a whole lot of different styles of writing shoved into one book. And as far as ancient books written around the same time when the Bible's actually assembled, you got the works of Herodotus. I would say it's not as good as Herodotus. I would say it actually suffers a great deal worse than like later books like Thucydides or Xenophon, which are written right after Herodotus. So again, they're better historical accounts. But even those books, like we don't sit there and say, well, everything Xenophon said is real, because the problem is Xenophon uses divine causation. He conflates places. He makes a lot of mistakes. And so there's whole fields of studies on historiography, how historians are going to analyze history that this guy's ignoring, right? And that's what's problem. He's presenting an argument that's fallacious, not only because of the way he's asserting it, but it ignores an entire field of scholarship.
Because he's assuming from the beginning that the Bible is the best book, because it's from God. It has to be true. Therefore, it's got to be the best. So,
right. And so he's going to find one or two academics that maybe agree with that, but it's largely discounted in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm not saying it's wholly inaccurate. I mean, there's events and places in the Bible that are real places and real events.
Sure.
And to anybody who says that is an idiot. Like if an atheist says everything in the Bible is spurious and unfounded, well, you're an idiot. You're right. Actually more off the farm, so to speak, than someone that says it's 100% accurate, because you need to be critical in your evaluation if you're a skeptic. And
because
you have to accept the hits with the misses. Right?
Yeah. That's someone rushing to judgment, because it's easy to go, oh, there's nothing in there. But just to flip the question on just any movie or any book that isn't the Bible, and are you going to make the claim there's nothing historical in any of these books, in any of these movies, even the ones that we know? There are movies that go into space. We know the planets are real. Are we going to deny that the planets that they say they're going to are real? No. But
snakes on a plane. We know that planes are real, and we know snakes exist. Therefore, snakes on a plane.
And for understanding the history of various time periods of the ancient Hebrews, the Bible serves as one of the best historical, ethnographic, like basically for archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians, the Bible is sometimes one of our best source documents to see how did the people of the time project their belief system and their cultural identity. I mean, it's important that way. So to say the Bible's not important is for understanding history is also fallacious.
Well, that's the other thing. Is that you have to
anthropologically and
I feel bad. I was just interrupting to agree. I think sometimes you have to think meta about it. Just like you were saying, it's not maybe even important to think of it as a history text or the stories of them as a history text so much as when we actually want to look at the early Christian church, when we want to see how these religions formed and the actual books that got put together, then now we actually are looking into history. But that's like a different question. That's almost the meta question that the actual archaeologists are probably asking.
Right.
And okay, back into the absolute.
It does look like Dick Dastardly from Hanna-Barbera.
Archaeologists used to say the dinosaurs died out slowly because of changes in the atmosphere. And I remember when I was going to school, the theory about why the dinosaurs died out and other species began
I gotta stop.
Take the stage.
Archaeologists don't say shit about dinosaurs. That's paleontologists.
Yeah.
Like someone's asked me about dinosaurs and I tell them, I'm not a fucking paleontologist.
Right.
I'm an archaeologist.
You're looking at things a few thousand years old. They're looking at things millions of years old. Totally different, yeah.
And it is what happens when you speak outside your expertise. These are the kind of things. It's fine for a layperson to do that and even learn from the experience.
Right.
But this man is over here trying to teach.
He's like a
history,
jack of all trades. Yeah. He's given you everything. And I mean, yeah, when we first started finding large caches of dinosaur fossils in the 1800s, we didn't really know what they were because there's nothing alive today that is anything near that size. So it took a while. We had got to get them, piece them together, and they had to try and rationalize what happened because at the time, God made everything about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Why don't we hear about these in the Bible? Then Ken Hovind will tell you, well, yeah, they were in the Bible because of a few vague references. They were on the flood, but Noah took babies. But yeah, then as we matured a little bit, they're not here today. So what happened to them? Why did they all go extinct? And science did have to spend a long time to try to figure that out. Answers in science don't come instantly. You've got to do a lot of work, a lot of digging, a lot of research to figure it out. But yeah, that's what science does.
Yeah, you actually need to go out and do experiments or find evidence, if not empirical testing. Go out and collect evidence.
For the past 25, 30 years, I think there's a huge consensus on the crater in the Gulf of Mexico was what killed most of the dinosaurs. At least the large ones, the smaller ones probably that didn't need so much food to survive could have evolved beyond that.
Which, spoiler alert, he's about to contradict, mainstream science as you do.
It was based on...
He's not on board with that whole evolution thing.
No, well, so much of science triggers them very subtly, this guy, but just a nice little brimmer.
Yeah. Other species began to take the stage. It was based on some disease, some plague came through. But the more they dug, the more evidence...
Can you guys imagine a plague or a disease coming through a population? Crazy. That's silly.
So crazy, right?
Yeah. Totally silly.
Was that there had been some catastrophic, cataclysmic flood because all these dinosaurs were piles of mud and they died. And they could see evidence of this all over the world. Well, the Bible tells us what that means. It's called the flood. But they said, we can't accept that. So they came up with the asteroid. How many of you just heard it again last week?
We just pulled it out of thin air.
Yeah.
Iridium layer all over the earth.
I always like how they're like, those silly scientists have a narrative, but not us. Not us. Totally no.
The iridium layer all over the Earth, the KT boundary. I mean, and again, lots of people have spent their careers studying this and trying to figure this out. You know, his research is just open up the Bible and see what the Bronze Age thought about it.
Again, not archaeologists, though.
No, not archaeologists.
Oh, he's now going into like full-on challenging modern science. I mean,
he's going Ken Hovind, full Ken Hovind. You know, the flood is real, because how else could you get fossils? You could never have fossils all over the Earth unless there was a worldwide flood. That's the only way it could happen, right?
Well, interesting. On one hand, he's denying superpositioning. On the other hand, right on the other side, he wants to use superpositioning within a flood, a quote unquote flood myth narrative to support his position. So you either believe in superpositioning and accept the science behind it and all the nuances that are related to it, or you reject it. You don't get to pick and choose your science within the same discipline, right? That is, it's not like you can say, well, this superpositioning is right and this superpositioning is wrong, when you don't even understand the concept, which is obviously doesn't.
Yeah, I get the feeling we're about to get a lot of scientific concepts that he doesn't get. Which he's speaking completely out his expertise. Why are preachers challenging scientific? When I use the T word, it seems to trigger them. A theory? Oh my God, it's not a framework of facts. Right. Highest level in science.
Tsunamis that buried a lot of vegetation, which is where we get our coal and our oil. And this is true. That's where you get the coal and oil. It was all buried by layers of mud and pressure. And it wiped out the dinosaurs.
He believes about the freedom underground.
Quantities of debris that covered the dinosaurs, it would have extinguished all life on the planet if some of it had not been preserved somehow above the waters. You're listening? Well, that's what the Bible says. So they're right in that.
Oh, he just snuck the ark in there.
I was going to say that was a bait and switch.
Tells us that there was a catastrophic flood. They can't accept that it was the Bible. So they're looking all over the planet saying, which asteroid was it? Was it a big meteor that hit?
No, it wasn't even a flood that we say killed the dinosaurs. As far, I may be wrong, but came down, destroyed either the environment or made it such that the large animals could not survive anymore, and then get naturally selected for a new stage of smaller animals. In fact, dinosaurs are still alive. You eat them in chicken nuggets every day.
Because
not every day, maybe
in a food scarce world where much of the vegetation had been dead, how many calories would a brontosaurus need to eat every day just to stay alive? Hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of calories. But how much would a chicken need to stay alive? Not nearly as much. They could survive. The bigger ones died off.
That's right. And remember that it's Inception, because you're eating dinosaur chicken nuggets means that you are eating dinosaurs shaped like dinosaurs. It's fantastic. All right, moving on. Like I said, the two schmucks between the academic. We're bringing the hard stuff here tonight.
Near the Gulf of Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, was it the one in New Mexico? Which crater was it that wiped out the dinosaurs?
Was it the Behringer crater? That's not nearly big enough.
There's a bias of people who don't want to believe the religious truth of the Bible, and that's very simple. It's because
why did he not just say truth? Am I just nitpicking? He could have said truth, the truth of the Bible. He said the religious truth.
He doesn't want you to just take the Bible for history or as a work of literature. He wants the woo. You got to accept the God and the magic, the metaphysics. That's what he's really concerned with.
If it's true, then you're accountable to God about the way you're living. and people who live a life that's accountable to God.
That's actually not necessarily true. If God's true, then I should believe that he's true. And the logistics, I think you then need to prove to me afterwards. Worship, personal relationship, any of that stuff, I don't know. Get coffee with me first, call me, I don't know.
Or they have to disprove it and say, this is all an accident. We are our own God. We don't have to answer.
We don't believe that we're an accident. That is also another straw man. We believe that there were the right chemicals in the right situation for life to finally develop after billions of years. Thank you.
To God. Miller Burroughs from Yale wrote, on the whole, however, archaeological work has unquestionably strengthened confidence in the reliability of the scriptural record. More than one archaeologist has found his respect for the Bible increased by the experience of excavation in Palestine.
More than one? So two?
The more they dug, though they had doubts going into it, the more they dug, the more they found out the rocks do cry out. K.A. Kitchen, an interesting name, wrote, in terms of general reliability, the Old Testament comes out remarkably well, so long as its writings and writers are treated fairly and even-handedly. Now, some of the best prophecies that have strengthened the validity of the Bible are very clear, precise prophecies.
Here we go.
Isaiah chapter 13,
my body is ready.
Verse 19 to 22, and these relate to Babylon. So turn in your Bibles with me to Isaiah chapter.
Got your Bible, Amy?
13. 19 to 22.
I'll grab it.
In Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited, nor
Babylon
will
5.
From generation to generation. Nor will the Arabian pitch its tent there, nor will the shepherds make their sheepfolds there. But wild beasts of the desert will lie there, and their houses will be full of owls, and ostriches will dwell there.
Owls. Wow.
There. That means prance. The hyenas will howl in their citadels.
I just got excited when he said pitch tent.
What about hyenas? He said hyenas.
Not be prolonged.
Woo, hyenas.
Now, keep in mind, a prophecy from Isaiah and Jeremiah and others about the fall of Babylon was probably one of the most astonishing prophecies. Let me explain why. Many of the capital nations of the world that had been conquered were later rebuilt.
I actually feel bad for him right now.
Conquered, and especially there near Alexandria.
Why is that?
And
tell
because
what's
he's about
going
to
on.
like step all over his dick, like really bad.
All right, we'll let him do it. Then we'll let you point out what he just did.
We're rearing in the
he's
fun
gonna
here.
jump up and down on it, right? Like he's not just gonna step on it; he's gonna put on golf cleats and then jump up and down on it. It's really
my!
He's gonna pay Amy to kick him in the balls.
I was gonna say you normally have to pay extra for that.
Yeah,
nonetheless,
he'll pay. He will pay for you to kick him.
If you just joined us, we are Midnight Ranting on When the Rocks Cry. Oh, Grandpa, it's okay. It's going to be okay.
The region around Cairo, and has been built up, conquered, built up, conquered, built up. Because it was a good situation, they'd say, well, let's dust ourselves off.
Yeah, you know what? Water is the situation. Water. Okay.
Things. That's why a lot of folks were wondering after Hurricane Katrina. They said, New Orleans is below sea level. Should we really build it back up again? It's not the best place to put a lot of people. But Babylon was a great location. Even Jerusalem on top of a hill. You know, it's 27 times the city's been burnt and conquered and rebuilt. Babylon was a great location, very fertile area right by the Euphrates River. The idea that it would be conquered and not rebuilt was astounding. It was really ludicrous. I mean, that would be like, you know, Manhattan has thrived because it's an island surrounded by rivers on a rock, a great place to support the city, a great defense point. And to say that Manhattan is going to be conquered and never going to be rebuilt. That's what it was like back then. This was the empire. Let me give you some statistics that tell you what Babylon looked like back then.
Okay.
The wall around the main city was more than 11 miles long, 85 feet thick at the base, and many gates, including the Ishtar Gate. Matter of fact, there's a
My
picture
favorite
of the Ishtar
gate.
Gate that has been reconstructed. You've got up there on the screen with its enameled bricks showing 575 dragons and bulls and 120 lions. By the way, a lion.
Dragons? We're getting Gabe's a throaty.
Babylon. And 3 gorgeously decorated palaces of Nebuchadnezzar with its banquet hall and throne room, 57 feet wide and 168 feet long. The city today remains in ruins. The entire city of Babylon was an immense square totaling 15 miles on each side, with Marduk's temple and the Tower of Babylon at the center. Now, it tells us in history the city was divided by the Euphrates River running under the walls, which also served to irrigate and air condition the entire metropolis, and also to irrigate one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. In the Bible, it talks about the Euphrates River drying up in Revelation. Many people wonder what that means. Well, the Jews knew what that meant.
Sure.
It's not specifically mentioned in the Bible, but it is mentioned in history. The way that Babylon fell was King Belshazzar. Oh, by the way, they didn't even think he existed. They said there was no king in the Bible named
Belshazzar.
Daniel's Babylonian.
Belshazzar.
Belshazzar, not to be confused.
And all right, getting tagged again by DeFreak. Keep on sending those comments in about the wisdom. Just want to say about the language in hieroglyphics, no matter who you slice it, words are much more clear in interpretation than pictures. See, my question is, what do you mean in interpretation? Because I think our brains just translate the little words that we're reading, but I think they're pictures. I think we're just so used to looking at these little pictures that we go
basically pictures.
Yeah.
This is another problem. It's a common misunderstanding what hieroglyphics are. Yes, some symbols in hieroglyphics have specific meanings, but also some hieroglyphics represent sounds and concepts. So it's more difficult to learn, but it's no less descriptive. And in some ways, it's more descriptive than common phonetic only, because you can be a little more nuanced when a symbol means directly something rather than it being implied.
Yeah.
We know when people are talking about Ramses, because Ramses had a symbol that represented his name rather than king or pharaoh. Right. So again, that's a projection that's actually ahistorical, and I think there's a lot of Egyptologists that would disagree with that, particularly when we're talking about like languages like modern English, which is evolved from a bunch of other languages as well, typically German. So this is a problem. That's a cultural bias of the West.
And Titan is saying, what's that? Hieroglyphics are words. See Dr. Josh Bowen, Digital Hammurabi, Explain Ancient Sumerian. And Amy's got the book.
Right. That's right, baby. Pairs just nicely with our Skeptic Bible study.
Yep. Titan's correct. I mean, they're words. The symbols are words, and some symbols have sounds, right? But the truth is they relay concepts, and they're put together to form more complex, basically words, right? And this is just it's someone that's understanding Egyptology.
Mm-hmm. We need to get Dr. Josh on the show. In fact, we need to do peanut butter and chocolate. We need to get Pat and Dr. Josh. Oh no, I'm sure he's
actually what we need to do is get a couple Egyptologists on, because Dr. Josh doesn't specialize in ancient Egypt. He specializes in ancient Mesopotamia, which is different. And when you want to understand hieroglyphics, listen to someone who's studied it for the last 5 to 7 years and has a terminal degree in the reading and interpretation of hieroglyphic texts.
Well, you said you know some Egyptologists, so.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I do. But we'll get back to the true expert on history and science, as we are Skeptic Bible Study, or not Skeptic. We are Midnight Ranting, but we're in the Bible, because this is where this gentleman is taking us, as we're asking ourselves, do rocks, do they cry? Oh my God, it's so
Maybe
sad.
next he'll give us a lesson on Reformed Egyptian.
Yo, that shit annoys me so, because the Jews were not trying to deceive people. They were trying to just write stories, okay? Right. They're like, listen, it's kind of hot out here. Maybe we should just tell stories to each other before it drops to like negative 40 degrees at night. But Joseph Smith, on the other hand, Reformed Egyptian. That is a true slap on the face to the field. Well, I guess field
Egyptology, archaeology,
linguistics, really, but a multitude of fields should be offended by Joseph Smith.
Confused with Belshazzar, who is the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar and the son of Nabonidus. Belshazzar was having a feast. He was sort of acting.
Nabonidus.
His father was away defending the kingdom in another location, and the Medo-Persians had surrounded the city. The young king was a little bit arrogant. He said, we have nothing to worry about. They can never get through our walls. They'll never get over our walls. But he didn't realize they'd go under the wall. They diverted the Euphrates River where it ran into a dry lake bed.
We built up and they went down.
Night, they were all drunken and feasting, and they marched under the walls of the city. They found that the inner gates had been left open because the soldiers were drunk. And in one night, the city fell, and they moved the capital somewhere else. Matter of fact, we got pictures here, an artist's rendition of how they went underneath the walls.
My favorite thing is that they are going here and they go artist rendition, and they're pointing to it like a photo. It's not a photo. It's just whatever some dude thought it looks like.
Well, let him finish giving this account, because
that's true. That's true.
This is he's using the biblical account, and it's been disproved by archaeology and history. Like what he's trying to say has been proven by.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
fell.
I kind of figured that.
They moved that capital.
The capital somewhere else. Matter of fact, we got pictures here, an artist's rendition of how they went underneath the walls of ancient Babylon, and they entered in through the second gates. Isaiah 45, verse 1 says, and thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand
Miley Cyrus? They attacked Miley?
I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. This prophecy of Isaiah is given 150 years before Cyrus is born. Mentions him by name. That was one of the reasons the critics said, how can that be? How can that be true? And so that was foretold word for word in Isaiah. Then you go to Daniel, you see the fulfillment. It says, and the gates shall not be shut. Remember what I said? They went under the wall. The inner gates, once they got under the wall, they still had other gates. That's why they were so self-confident.
You shall not pass.
Been left open.
See, that was their one problem. They should have built under gates. See, if over gates, need under gates. Alternatively, they needed Bill Gates. Who knows, people?
Because they thought, why lock them? Because they can't get through the first set of gates. If they get through, then we'll lock them. Well, they went underneath the wall in the middle of the night. The soldiers were drunk and were not prepared, and the city fell. Now, during the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein knew that the prophecies of Isaiah said that Babylon would never be rebuilt. He said, I'm going to prove it wrong. I'm going to rebuild it. I will then move my capital from Baghdad to Babylon.
Me too, Reservoir.
And he began a very expensive process of rebuilding ancient Babylon. Now, some will say, it was rebuilt. It's vacant. The Arabs think it's haunted. They don't even want to work on it. They don't want to live there.
It's haunted.
So his building construction was stopped at the beginning of the first Gulf War because he had to put all of his resources into defending the country. He had just resumed rebuilding the ruins again when the second Gulf War broke out. And then, of course, it has come to a screeching halt since then. Matter of fact, they've had a lot of problems with looters going through the ancient ruins of Babylon and taking artifacts. So Marines are guarding it now. It's uninhabited. The prophecy was fulfilled. Can you say amen? It said it will not be inhabited. It will never again become a capital city, a thriving city. It was destroyed. And, of course, we know that Saddam is not going to get a third chance. The Bible talks about the phenomenal wealth of Egypt, for example. All right, I want someone to help me. This is one of our...
Okay, let's just stop. I got to... This is...
Yeah, stop it here. Talk about Babylon before you...
So, again, I'm forgetting his name. sorry,
Doug Batchelor.
He's asserting, Doug Batchelor. He's asserting that Cyrus destroyed Babylon. Okay, we have no evidence of destruction of Babylon at this time period. Texts that are non-biblical, basically, and these are, Cyrus's texts, the guy who actually did the conquering, not some Jewish fan fiction hundreds of years later. He said the city was given without a fight. He actually, Nabonidus, the king, and his son, who actually is outside the capital at the time, although the Jewish account says he was killed. There's no evidence for that. There's nothing in the record of the kings that either Cyrus or that followed after him. Interestingly enough, Cyrus in his own account says that the city was surrendered, basically negotiations, because Nabonidus found out that he wasn't going to be able to defend the city, so he surrendered, and on the condition that he be treated well. And so he was taken into like protective custody and then lived out the rest of his life under Cyrus's protection, kind of given a country villa type attitude, right? In a city that was under control of the expanding empire. So there was no secret SEAL Team 6 entry into the town. The town wasn't looted and destroyed.
Gate, yeah.
It was surrendered with, according to records outside the biblical text, it was surrendered without a fight. Interestingly enough, there's no archaeological record to support a destruction of the city. And actually, we know that it was occupied afterwards. The city and its residents remained in place. Cyrus puts a local governor, which is given like a title of governor, but like lesser king, basically. And it remains occupied. During the time it remains occupied is actually brought into Hellenistic control, Macedonian control with Alexander the Great. After Alexander the Great, who dies in Babylon, so obviously it wasn't destroyed if Alexander the Great actually dies in the city, because it was his kind of intermediate headquarters at the time. It's divided up, goes into the territory of the Seleucid Empire, remains an important city under the Seleucids, is occupied up through the next 100 or so years. About the mid-2nd century, the same time we talk about Antiochus IV, right? The one from the Maccabean revolt. He attempts to recolonize because the city's starting to go into decline at that time. So he sends a bunch of Greek colonists to go and try to set up residence there. And so there's a small reinvigoration of the city, but he's unable to keep it because the Parthians come in. Again, Eastern group come in, pushes the Greek influence and takes control of the region. We do know that in the 2nd century CE, that Trajan is going to come in. Yes, that Trajan, the emperor, he's going to come into the region after pushing out the Parthians. And he's going to actually dismay that although the city is still occupied, it's gone into great decline. And but there is periods of growth, expansion, contraction, rebuilding, long after the biblical narrative that the city was destroyed. It was never destroyed. It went into natural decline and then was occasionally had periods of reinvigoration. But probably sometime around 2nd, 3rd century CE, it's going to fall out of use because it's a constant battleground between the Parthians and the Romans. It's like that spot where they show up to fight each other. Right, so it's a constantly re-sacked and sacked city, but that sacking that eventually ends to its ultimate decline occurs under the Romans, not anybody else. And the Parthians hold it for about nearly 250, 300 years after the Greeks did. So it's well into the 1st century that it's still CE, that it's still being used and occupied as a prominent city in the region. So this is just, the guy is off by at least 700 years, at least 6. So his narrative's completely false.
So why did they never rebuild the city after that?
Well, there was constant warfare between East and West during the period, right? I mean, this is the problem, is that you don't always reoccupy cities. One of the issues with Babylon is, yes, it's built on a river, but in order to have the infrastructure to make controlling that river, so remember we talked about flood mythologies, right?
Yeah.
You have to have enough people there in the city to keep the city together, right? It's a city that relies a lot on imports, trade. Without that infrastructure and that a certain size of population, a city like Babylon's not going to thrive and just go into decay. Another example is Rome after it's sacked, right? Rome gets sacked, Goths come in, it's later reoccupied by the Ostrogoths, right? This is one of the problems. Rome is largely goes into decline in the 5th, 6th, and 7th century, and Rome's unoccupied. There's ruins everywhere, only certain buildings are being occupied, and you could see it as being destroyed, but the Romans of the time didn't see it that way. They just saw it as the remnants of a greater former empire, right? So this he's really an idiot. This is, I can't actually believe he said this, because Alexander the Great not only went to Babylon, he lived there, right? So like, it wasn't destroyed.
He's almost 1,000 years off.
Well, not 1,000, about I'd say 600-700, but he says it was destroyed under Cyrus, right? You know, he's saying that in 539 Cyrus destroys the city. Well, Alexander dies. He actually captures the city in 331. He dies in 323. So again, it's 200 effing years that he's off. That the city was still occupied, vibrant, a cultural center. It was when Alexander takes it, he goes there because it is like what is seen as the crown jewel of the region, right? So again, he's just this guy's an idiot.
And I just wanted to say that yes, it is true, Will. I am fulfilling my destiny as a prophet. Dun dun dun. Poof. But I can only predict when people eat ramen, so it's very, it's a very minimal job category. But we're going back into the fun. Woohoo! And in fact, we are about a little bit past halfway of this video. And if you are enjoying the wisdom, then you can tell us about it by tagging us at James W. or Amy Newman in chat, and then at the end we'll be opening up the open mic, so you can either thank Pat or you can tell us all where we have been getting it wrong.
Tell us we're going to hell.
And read through verse 26. Hebrews 11, 24 to 26.
By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a short time. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward.
It's interesting that Paul, who we believe wrote Hebrews, he makes a point when he goes through all the people of faith who chose to follow God. One he highlights is Moses, as someone who really sacrificed the greatest riches in the world for Christ's sake. And he says, because he walked away from Egypt, implying that Egypt was one of the richest places in the world.
Is Hebrews considered a valid Pauline book?
During the 1800s.
It's unknown. It's attributed to Paul, but most scholars don't think Paul wrote it.
But some of you know the story of King Tut.
Falsely attributed, right?
You can just look in history.
Oh, by the way, before he continues, Moses fled Egypt according to the biblical narrative, because he committed murder, not because he was turning his back. He committed murder and fled in order to escape prosecution for his crime.
Saw
an
Egyptian attacking a Hebrew, and he killed the Egyptian, and then he bolted.
Right.
Undisputed greatest treasure find in, you could say, greatest treasure find.
Just trying to figure out what was.
You could say in modern times, when Howard Carter was there in Egypt, and he uncovered in a poor king's tomb. This king does not even have a pyramid. He's buried underground. They just found a corridor leading down in the rock, and they kept digging, and pretty soon, I remember reading about this. I used to do a whole presentation on King Tut's treasures, and we went to Egypt and went on a tour, and I've seen them just within a few inches, probably not just millions, billions of dollars, priceless treasure. And when he first found this door that was still sealed, keep in mind, all of the pyramids, when they found them, they'd all been looted. They'd all been basically gutted by thieves millennia earlier. Some of these thieves were very, very well-funded and determined. They tunneled through rock to get to the treasures. But when they found the...
That is... I'm sorry. I guess that is a big deal. It's just so funny. That was anticlimactic. But it's on theme, baby. They traveled through rock.
Tunneled through rock. Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine that. They were that dedicated.
Unsealed door. The outer chamber had already been rummaged through. But then when they found the inner chamber, this unsealed door, and they got the press and everybody there, and they've actually got photographs of where he broke the seal, and he makes a little hole.
I'm pretty sure that's coming up next.
Right? He made a glory hole?
He said, do you see anything? He said, yes,
maybe.
Wonderful things. He saw the glint of gold everywhere.
Wonderful things.
You think about Ramses, some of the kings that lived during the time of Moses, and Moses would have been maybe the prince. He could have been at least had a high office in the kingdom by virtue to his relationship, being
the baker.
As a son of Pharaoh. And he turned his back on that. Incredible wealth. He was pampered everywhere he went. I mean, when he left Egypt at 40 years of age, how much of the wealth and the ease of Egypt do you think Moses was enjoying during that time in his life?
50%.
Learjet, gilded Mercedes chariot, and I mean, Gucci clothes and just
not an iron chariot though.
Okay. Are you trolling us or are we trolling you here, buddy? Okay, that's our job.
The famous had, and he walked away and he left with nothing but a staff in his hand, so to speak. He fled naked, and he was willing to walk with all of that because he thought
he fled.
I was gonna say,
he didn't walk away. He ran away, right?
He ran, baby, ran naked. I love that whole sentence.
A higher calling for him. Well, we know the Bible's telling the truth when it talks about the riches he turned his back on. Can you imagine how fabulous it was? Moses was looking at the pyramids when he lived there.
Super fabulous.
They're glazing on them, and those pyramids they'd shine in the sun because they were with polished stone. I'm trying to think of the word, that glazed stone that had been baked. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful kingdom at that time. The Sphinx had its nose back then.
Fabulous.
One of the other great discoveries of history, and this is in your lesson, a matter of fact, I think I got a couple of pages mixed up, but you won't mind, was when they began
to dig around
on this tell called Tel Mardika, and it's an ancient city called Ebla. Did you read about that a little bit in your lesson? It's
I saw that on
northwest Syria, about 55 kilometers south of Aleppo, and it's famous mainly for the archives they found somewhere. I've seen everything from 14,000 to 2,000 cuneiform tablets. I guess some of them were broken. They counted.
Call now, folks.
Big disparity.
Operators standing by.
Everybody agrees it's more than 14,000 clay tablets, well preserved. It was a virtual library. Most of this library was dealing with trade with surrounding nations. They were records. But it was very, very helpful because of the names that were given. This is a cuneiform language that they were able to decipher. They're able to read. There's experts that can read this language today. They dated from around 2,500 BC. They're written in Sumerian and Eblaite, a previously unknown Semitic language. Keep in mind the Jews spoke a Semitic language, so it's similar. I guess it's like the difference between Pastor Mike Thompson and myself, or the Australians or New Zealanders and the Americans.
That's not accurate.
I mean, they were dialects that understood each other, but there were differences. It's like we say.
Well, there was to date. We have 17,000 texts that have been associated, right? Tablets, right? So he's close. 14,000 at the time this video made. Maybe they didn't have. I don't know when the video was made. It looks a little dated, but yeah, there's 17,000 tablets in the collection. And he's right. Most of them are related to local trade. They're basically receipts and order forms.
M in England, program ends with an E. You know what I'm saying? And so there were some differences, but it was a language they could communicate with. So keeping that in mind, this discovery found more clay tablets than had been produced by all other excavations at that point. So it was just a trove of information. And of course, I'm not even sure if they've read all of it yet. But early on, they began to discover, by the way, this big discovery was in the 1970s. They found a lot of biblical writings concerning the patriarchs to be viable. They contained extensive trade records. They have the oldest reference to Jerusalem dating from before the time of Abraham, except it's not called Jerusalem. You know what it's called? Salem. What did Jerusalem, what did Abraham refer to?
Say Boston, but okay.
Melchizedek is the king of Salem. That city, which is later known as Jerusalem, is mentioned in the tablets of Ebla.
And honestly, that's a very pretty name. I feel like nothing could go wrong in Salem.
Documents written on these tablets also refer to some of the patriarchs. For instance, it mentions Abraham,
Lincoln,
Ishmael, David. Oh, in the 1800s, they doubted the existence of King David. They said he is a figment, he is a fable from Hebrew mythology. He never lived. There's no records we find of David. Then they dug up the tablets of Ebla. They found reference of David to David.
I believe he was he mythical, David?
Esau is mentioned. Saul is mentioned. Kings are named, from which we know there were no other sources in history. Bible cities are referred to. Now here, remember I told you about the prophecy in Isaiah chapter 13? The bombshell in the Ebla tablets was when there were records of trade with Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, that just blew them away, because keep in mind, this is from the time of Abraham. Did they still exist then? It was during the time of Abraham they were finally destroyed. So they had trade records of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities of the plains.
Don't think that's true.
In the same order as they are in the Bible.
Yeah, that's a little sus.
Same way. It speaks of Ur as being the territory of Haran. Keep in mind, it was Ur from where Abraham came from. It speaks of two Urs. Ur of the Chaldees, the Bible makes clear that Abraham came from Ur of the Chaldees, thus showing the Bible writer was aware there are two. He distinguished Abraham didn't come just from Ur, but Ur of the Chaldees, because there was a couple of cities by that name. Not only that, but it mentions the Sumerians, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites are all mentioned in the Ebla tablet. So a great deal.
Can I not?
Authenticity was added to the Bible's credibility with this incredible discovery. Another thing that happened is they said at the time of Moses, they did not have the ability to write. And then they discovered what they call the Law Code of Hammurabi.
Don't think they did.
In 1901 and 1902 in Susa. How many of you have heard of the Law Code of Hammurabi? Hammurabi, I've heard it said a couple of times.
Digital Hammurabi?
It shows that the practices of the patriarchs, they were common practices. It's very similar, and even some of the laws that you find, they said Moses may have stolen his law from Hammurabi. Well, a lot of these laws were common sense. Don't murder, don't steal. I mean, does it mean that Moses copied it from someone else because it says that? I was sort of an absurd argument. Why?
Well, it's absurd.
Of the Bible, when so much of it has been substantiated by archaeology, and I hope
it has.
As you read these things,
he's getting some names of cities right. That's it. But again, and what the tablets actually say is they're disputed. There are people that, you're translating from this other Semitic language that's not Sumerian, right, but related to Sumerian. And so there's a little bit of guesswork, right? Like, are these two towns equivalent? And some people say, yeah, this is why you have to have Dr. Josh on, right? Because I read a couple papers real quick today to get ready for this. And this is where the area, but most linguists that specialize in ancient Sumerian have actually said that not the original, but the initial, hey, this is talking about this and this is talking about that. A lot of that hasn't panned out in actual translation. So a lot of what he's talking about now in this part of the video has been not all of it, but a large portion, more than half or so, a considerable percentage, greater than 50% of the assertions that he's making have not panned out in academic review. Because remember, ancient Sumerian, even if you were proficient in it like Dr. Josh is, it takes a long time to translate a text. And then you're talking about this other language that's not Sumerian, and so you have to learn what this language is and what the differences are to Sumerian, so you can translate from Sumerian, from this text, right, to Sumerian, so you can understand it. So again, it's like second order translation, learning a new language, and it's taken scholars 20 years to get to where now they've translated most of these, not most, but enough of these to talk to authoritatively say that yes, there's some Sumerian, there's this other language here that's related, and we've translated enough now, and many of them have said, yeah, this isn't talking about the same thing, and it's not talking about things in the Hebrew Bible. Some of the things they are talking about, and that's fair.
Yeah,
And
I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day, so that doesn't mean
right.
But you expect that within a historical text, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's certain things in the Bible that are historically accurate, but he's not counting the misses, because these tablets also showed some things asserted in the Bible aren't real either. They're actually false assertions. But you have Dr. Josh talk about it, particularly because it's all about linguistics.
And so we are about to get to the end of this video. We only have a few minutes left, even more. So we're coming to the end of it, and we're about to switch into our open mic, where you can tell us about all of the wisdom that you just heard. But I will say, I'm seeing Ralph. Come on and join, because I'll tell you,
Ralph is on fire.
I'll worship at the shrine of evidence over the shrine of any god any day, baby.
Over the Shroud of Turin.
I know, the Shroud of Turin. Oh my lordy. Someone could just drone that on. I really don't understand how that is even defensible, the Shroud of Turin. Most theists and most Christians, I don't think, use the Shroud of Turin. But
it doesn't come
we
up a lot.
love, yeah, exactly. So sending the link into chat, and doesn't matter if you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, you're going to be able to join us. And please keep your mic muted when not talking. But until then, let's get back to the fun. Let's land the plane. If you just joined us, we are Midnight Ranting. We are asking ourselves, screw that when doves cry, which is an amazing song, by the way. But we're asking, when do rocks cry? Oh, rocks are crying out. It's okay, Grandpa. Don't cry.
What's that rock saying, Amy? God is real?
I know. He's telling us, you stupid atheist. You really think that you came from this? Oh, man. It's okay. Calm down, Grandpa. It's going to be okay.
You got poofed out of nothing by the war god of the ancient Hebrews. Doesn't that make much more sense?
It happens to us all. It really does. It happens to the best of us.
Reading a religious book or collection of fables, this is, I believe, the most accurate history book in the world. And that doesn't just start after Abraham. I believe it's accurate from Genesis 1:1.
Looks like
it should
older Otangelo.
To confirm everything that you find from Genesis
1:1.
Play.
They trust me.
Did you see it? Like Otangelo's grandpa? Guy. Yeah, go back. About 10 seconds back.
There we go. Even further? Is that
a little bit. One. Yeah, should be.
Book in the world, and that doesn't just start after Abraham. I believe it's accurate from Genesis 1:1.
Yeah, there you go.
Him. Should time go on, they'd be able to confirm everything that you find from Genesis 1. Matter of fact, it'll all be confirmed someday. Trust me. To the present day, that it is a book that is the perfect word of God that He has preserved for us.
Perfect word.
Stay tuned.
The perfect word, and I think that is it, because it becomes an infomercial after
and
that.
And infomercial to sell his products.
Yes.
Right.
So you're welcome to check out. I think it might be defunct by now, but we always want to do what was.
You can find him on. He's got a YouTube channel, Doug Batchelor.
But yes,
if you want to
rocks cry out,
listen to more of his content. Yep.
So one thing he did was quote archaeologists, right, and wanted to make the best case for something. So I put in the chat. Amy can put up now. I found the link to Oxford University's Press very short introduction, biblical archaeology, Klein's book. And I actually have it on digital in addition to copies I give my students, right? So she can send that link out right now. So if you're interested in buying this book, it's $12. It wasn't 10. Sorry. It's a newer edition. But I want to read you something that Eric Klein, who George Washington University, leading scholar in ancient Near East studies, knows a lot about the Levant. It's one of the areas he focuses on. I'm going to read you. It's a little long, so just give me a second. And it's a quote that's worth listening to. While biblical archaeologists working today are generally more interested in learning about the details of daily life in ancient biblical world than proving or disproving the accounts of the Bible, many lay people have these priorities reversed. They want to know, did the flood take place? Did Abraham and the patriarchs exist? Were Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed by fire and brimstone? Did the Exodus occur? These were some of the original questions in biblical archaeology that intrigued the earliest pioneers in the field. They still resonate today, but are far from being answered by biblical archaeologists. In fact, solutions and answers to such questions are more frequently proposed by pseudo-archaeologists or archaeological charlatans who take the public's money to support ventures that offer little chance of furthering the cause of knowledge. Every year, scientific expeditions embark to look for the Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, the Ark of the Covenant, and the lost 10 tribes of Israel. These expeditions are often supported by prodigious sums of money donated by gullible believers who eagerly accept tales spun by sincere but misguided amateurs or by rapacious confidence men. Just a little bit more, but I have to scroll down. These ventures, which usually originate outside the confines of established scholarly institutions, engender confusion about what is real and what is fake. By practicing pseudo-archaeology rather than by using established archaeological principles and real science, the archaeological charlatans bring discredit to the field of biblical archaeology. And that's from page 71 into 72 of the book, of the text I recommend. So I think that's pretty much where biblical archaeology stands. The term now has received some repair because of people like Klein saying it's not a useless term. But you have to understand that it has a lot of luggage that brings along with it because of the amount of misuse of the term in previous to the 1970s, 1980s. So that's just
So the freak, he is a Seventh-day Adventist, but that's just a denomination of Christianity. So
I just to add one more quote from
go ahead.
Going down a little bit in this analysis says, as a result, many of the earliest stories of the Hebrew Bible, especially those from the creation of the Exodus, have not been corroborated by archaeologists and remain solely a matter of faith.
So we got Ralph in there saying archaeology is nothing but guesswork.
Right.
And
I'm not going to go that far. We're going to have to tweak it up.
I will say sending love to Will out there who says has been streaming since 1 p.m. He's been clocking in, baby. Go check out Will Stewart, THFC Rants. I mean, how can this channel not be biased to ranting when we are Midnight Ranting?
Goes together with,
Exactly.
But I would encourage anyone to read Klein's book. Again, I just looked it up because I wanted to give you guys accurate information.
What's it called? The title?
It's Oxford University's Press. It's in a series called A Very Short Introduction, and it's Biblical Archaeology is the title.
Okay.
So it's a series that are specifically written as pocket source material, pocket scholarship. It's 134 pages. So yes, it's a little bit longer than I suggested, but I'm sure you can power through it. It's you can read it in one day, no more than 2 days.
I mean,
I'd like to get paid some references to go onto the place.
It would be nice to get paid a lot of money to walk around in the desert looking for Bible artifacts that you're never going to find. So you're always going to need to keep going out and looking. Just keep the money coming. One day we'll prove the Bible. We'll prove it one day.
I agree.
Keep sending the money.
We'll find where the Garden of Eden really is. Trust me.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant, where we almost got it.
But if you disagree with us, the link is now pinned in all different YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. It all comes to the same place, baby, as we're having fun tonight. We're asking ourselves, well, what happens when rocks cry? But really, we're saying, is there a good foundation for a biblically accurate history of the world? Is the Bible being historically accurate?
Literal history.
Is it the best history book we got out there? I don't think so. Just because it has some history, or just because it has locations and some people that do exist, Yes, Egypt. And I think we were just having they brought up an Ethiopian woman who was married to Moses.
Yeah, he was taking a new wife.
That is a real place.
Real place.
I mean, these are real locations.
History is guesswork too, really, Ralph. Okay.
That does not mean that all of a sudden that Noah actually had a global flood and survived it and lived to 600 years old. Oh my Jeebus.
You know what's really guesswork? Faith. That's just a shot in the dark. But like Pat was saying, what somebody like the pastor here and these biblical archaeologists, they're only counting the hits. I mean, if you went to a psychic and they told you like 20 things and only like 1 or 2 actually panned out, would you say, oh, well, wow, they really must know something. There's got to be something there. Maybe it was just dumb luck or coincidence.
Again, you in archaeology, you got to be willing to, you got to write the misses too. And that's, I will say that, I've, even in my own experience, we as a research team, we were hoping that we'd find something, and we had some evidence that, and this is the problem with archaeology. Even I've seen it. You go like, maybe this is here because we have some evidence that suggests it might be. So then you're like, you got to really hold the reins back, because then it ends up not being what you want it to be, because, but you're kind of excited because it might be, right? So, and that's one thing is you don't dig any faster. You keep doing it methodologically sound. You don't rush because you think you might find the next cool thing. And then when you don't find anything, you can all go, okay, we didn't find what we wanted, but we found something else that's pretty cool. Or we found nothing, and we just go back and drink beer anyway as we fill out reports saying we found nothing.
That's the best thing
that
to
happens
do.
All the time.
Hey.
Mm-hmm. One of the most discouraging things I've had happen is we do these things called test pits, right? We find something that leads us to believe that, adjacent from a site we're working, there might be something really cool. We find like a piece of marble that maybe belonged to a statue, and maybe it's in the area. So you do a test pit around the area because maybe there's some monumental structure there, and you don't find anything. You find some, sherds of pottery, maybe some remnant of a wall, but you don't find any other piece of what you were looking for. Same thing happens with like deposits of objects. You find a bunch of pottery, making you think you're going to find a pottery dump, right, where they like had a bunch of containers in a place, but you only find 1 or 2, right? So it happens all the time.
But
you want to find a corn hoard, but you don't find one.
And also, absence of evidence is not necessarily, just because you don't find it doesn't mean it wasn't there. It's just not everything is preserved. There are things that are lost to history, so you can only find what you can find.
Well, that's not true in archaeology sometimes. Sometimes an absence of evidence is evidence of absence. If you think a city's supposed to be there and you don't find any fucking walls, and you say, no, there's a Roman city here.
Yeah.
But we don't find any walls, and we go outside the contemporaneous area, then either the original historian had it wrong, which is possibility.
Yeah.
But it's not where the ancient sources says it was, so the source is at minimum inaccurate, right? Maybe the city existed, but it was 12 miles east of where they said it was. Now, but the source is inaccurate. But but the city may still exist. But in some cases, you find both, right? The city's not there, and it didn't exist. That's pretty rare.
I mean, what are the odds that I guess it's possible, but it's very unlikely that an entire city could leave no trace whatsoever in the archaeological record. It seems very unlikely. You would almost expect.
I don't want to use the word.
Something.
I don't want to use the word impossible, but extremely unlikely to the point that it's not foundational within the field, right? You expect there to be. I mean, that's what archaeology is basically. If you were watching too much CSI, you'd go, it's the search for trace evidence, right? And some of it's not at least not that trace, right? I mean, you expect to find evidence. You expect to find, in an archaeological context, right? So it's not a perfect science, though, right? It's an academic discipline that has its own limitations. And
he mentioned Sodom and Gomorrah. Is there scholarship that says those were real cities? Because he's implying that there was.
Yeah, there's some, and it's pretty decent, but it also doesn't show that they were destroyed by molten lava falling from heaven. If they are the cities, right? Just like we know we've discovered Megiddo, right? But Megiddo is a real place. A lot of these places mentioned in the Bible are real places. I will tell you that there's no. I don't want. Again, this is Dr. Josh. I don't because I specifically asked him to come on to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah because there's some conflation in the scholarship. Is Sodom and Gomorrah the same Sodom and Gomorrah? Because during the later period, Sodom and Gomorrah kind of become terms for cities of iniquity, right? So
yeah,
okay. It has a historical site of Sodom and Gomorrah been found. There's some evidence suggests they have been, and it's some of it's pretty decent. I
have no idea if this is in your band of expertise, Pat, but I have heard a recent I don't know if it's an apologetic or an explanation that the angels weren't trying to have sex, or it wasn't about being gay. It was just about general wickedness, and that they were trying to get the angels out to know them, as in see them, like stock them up to see if they were a threat or something like that.
Well, I really don't want to. Yeah, it's kind of outside my, that's even then, but
because it's gotten gays killed. But who knows why? Yeah. I'm sorry.
I mean, judging by the numerous other references in the Bible that point to homosexuality not being something that they looked highly upon, it does seem pretty likely that, that probably is what they were talking about. Like, there's a lot of gay people in those cities. They're icky. They're nasty. It's like San Francisco or whatever. They just didn't like it because they didn't understand it.
If it's explicit in other areas, why weren't they explicit with Sodom and Gomorrah? And they were like, these people were sleeping around with men.
It does. The King James uses the term "no," which we know that was their way of saying had sex with, and then Lot offers his daughters specifically not to have a chit chat, but his virgin daughters to have sex with them, but they don't want to have sex with girls. They want to have sex with the men. I mean, it just seems to be a very unlikely interpretation that it would be talking about anything other than homosexuality. That's just my opinion.
I'm looking at the chat. Just before you misinterpreted me, I'm not saying that archaeology has definitively identified Sodom and Gomorrah, right? There are some sites that are suggested and have some evidence of possibly being Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you guys understand the difference? Right.
As in it could possibly be true.
Plausible.
Or it could be.
Right. It hasn't been discounted, right? When they find two sister cities that in a rough geographical region where Sodom and Gomorrah were supposedly be located, and they find two cities that look similar in construction and are within the right time period, there's a possibility they found, quote unquote, a site that may be Sodom and Gomorrah, but they have not identified for absolute certitude that they have found Sodom and Gomorrah. There is some scholarship that says that the representation of two cities may be that the Bible may be right, that there were two sister cities in this region that were pretty advanced in size, right? And so, again, we're not saying the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is true. We're just saying there's a possible link in the archaeological record, which has not been definitively proven to where it's readily accepted within academic circles.
And I think it also depends very much on what the actual story we're talking about, because saying there are two cities is like two sister cities, kind of an unimpressive claim. Claiming a guy lived inside a fish, I don't know if there's any archaeological evidence that you could find for that, and he escaped, so I don't even know what you would find.
Now, I did pull up a paper today, and I wasn't going to throw him under the bus. It was a guy named Stephen Collins. He's a professor of biblical studies at Trinity University. He actually came out, I don't know, about a decade ago and said, we found Sodom, right? Well, his work's been debunked. It's not because he's picked the site that might be wrong, but all of his scholarship to prove it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So again,
it's like people claiming they found the Ark. There's been a couple of times that's happened, but it's never been shown to be anything.
Right. I mean, I think, there's a few people that says, look, we're looking for this. Do these cities exist? There's some evidence suggests that maybe they aren't just works of fiction. But that's really where the scholarship is. Are Sodom and Gomorrah fiction? Most archaeologists go, we don't know. Could be, but there are some unidentified cities that are in the region that may possibly have been given be the historical footprint for a mythical tradition within the Old Testament of Sodom and Gomorrah. But we haven't found a city that was wiped out by magma falling from heaven.
And I just want to say we're going to go for about another 20-30 minutes. If we got no Theus one to join us. Come on and say hi. We don't bite unless you're kind of into that. But woohoo! So if you just joined us, we've been having fun. We've been Midnight Ranting, asking when the rocks cry out. Generally, they fall over, and then you don't have 3 tablets anymore. Now you just have 2. That's what happens when the rocks cry
King
out.
David is there evidence for him existing in the record?
That's divided scholarship. I'll be honest with you, I'm not convinced by it. I think it's suggestive, but not confirmative.
It's an open question.
And Biddy
there's references to being related to David, right? That's the problem. Yeah.
According to the book of Jude, Sodom and Gomorrah's fire is eternal. So it should be easy to find a place that's been on fire for centuries. Yeah, you'd think that'd be kind of easy to find.
Actually, that verse is used in an apologetic to support the concept of a non-eternal hell, because what it's saying is that the destruction of the fire was eternal because those cities have been destroyed forever, not that they're physically burning. So the effect is eternal, but not necessarily the burning is eternal. That's for annihilationism as a doctrine.
Well, to be fair, again, the other thing too is that people are looking for some divine causation. Like if a city was sacked at the end of the Bronze Age because during the Bronze Age collapse and was burnt to the ground, there are a lot of cities burnt to the ground at the end of the Bronze Age during the Bronze Age collapse. So just because you find a burnt out city in the Levant that's roughly at the right time period, and again, we don't know what the time period of the Bible is. It's all assertion and bullshit, in my opinion. But even if you can find something roughly the right time period, just because you have a burnt city doesn't mean it's not naturally caused. Because people went around burning down cities in the ancient world. That's how you won battles and won wars. So
I mean, this is like Jamie Russell with his evidence for the Exodus by showing things that kind of maybe correspond with the Exodus account. Like, oh, there's a mountain. It kind of looks like there might have been a fire up there at some point.
Well, I will tell you, Klein and the people that are of his level, there's no serious academic anymore that supports an Exodus narrative in archaeology, particularly those that specialize in the Levant. No one supports that. I would challenge someone to bring to me a published peer-reviewed article from a mainstream academic, not the Journal of Biblical Archaeology from 50 years ago. Those were all kinds of crazy assertions back then, but something written within the last two decades,
not from
that support an actual.
Oh boy!
Right. And there are journals of biblical archaeology now that are legitimate, right? But it's because the scholarship's been repaired and rehabilitated, not because the stuff 50 years ago was valid.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say 50. I should say 70 years ago now, because we keep going.
We have a guest in the back, Amy.
Woohoo! I think it's Ralph. All right, baby. I tend to add 15 minutes per person.
We'll see
how. So that will be. We'll go for a half hour, 45 minutes. We'll get Ralph in here as we switch into our open mic. We've been Midnight Ranting. When the rocks cry, it's time to break into Oh, with our special guest host, Pat Lowinger. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
As we switch into the open mic. Oh, well, hold on one sec. But yes, Ralph, we are Midnight Ranting. We are asking ourselves when the rocks cry out, or rather, is the Bible a historically accurate textbook? Hope you're doing well, and what are your thoughts?
Good morning, panel, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you. But if you dig, as opposed to an archaeologist, right? Dig, if you will, the picture of you and I engaged in a kiss, right? It seems like the mods cry. We just got blocked and timed out by the mods. I thought I was told that this was the big boy division where people didn't get triggered and time people out. Is that not true, Amy? This is what it sounds like when the mods cry.
We're trying to keep things tidy up.
You're having too much fun in there, Pat.
But it's true, though, isn't it? So I'll tell you what, when you chaps decide you're ready to play with the big boys and unblockers and stuff, I'll come back and we'll have a chat about why digging for things and rocks is not evidence. But I'll be back shortly. God bless.
I feel like that means that the Bible is not a historically accurate textbook. We did not get a defense of that.
Did he just
and
come
I just
on
want to
to
say
whine about being timed out?
I guess I do not know. I'm tired of the QQ. I'm tired of the QQ. It doesn't matter from what political side. I am nearly apolitical at this point. So gosh darn it, I just want Theus. I wish I could just get Pine Creek on here as much as to get his lovely conservative atheist butt to be like, no, don't make this about that. We want evidence. Yeah. We want empirical evidence. And I gave him, he can, anyone can cry, because I don't want to make it about him. Sending love, Ralph. I love everybody. But I bring in everybody and full screen their butts. I give you as much as an open micer would, which is like 3 to 5 minutes, which is how much you get as a starting comedian. So if anyone wants to speak their mind, or if they cannot get their thoughts out in 3 to 5 minutes, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know many other channels also that won't a lot of the times, because that's we're trying to be
people to the back.
We are trying to be the anti-Darth Dawkins channel. That is like our whole goal. Is that I get like a little excited when I hear views that differ than mine, because it's just like a scroll down list of everyone that's happy and all the non-believers are just high-fiving. And I'm like, yay, that's amazing. And then you see someone that's like, evolution is a religion. And I'm like, what? Okay. I'm sorry. Do you want to talk about that again? No, please, let's talk. Woohoo! What is up, Randolph? And Ancher had a question. I feel bad. I think James is trying to bring it up.
She's asking what countries are part of the Levant?
Well, so like Sinai, Syria, Jordan, modern Israel, region just east of there. And the Levant was kind of an amorphous term in antiquity. It's that very western middle portion of the crescent that runs along the coast. So
part of Iraq,
right. Well, very little, but yeah, part of Iraq. But yeah, so that if you just take a modern map and kind of, go from Syria down to where Egypt starts, like as a modern country, that's pretty much the Levant, and a little bit of telltale area in both sides. But the Levant was a region, right? So when you're identifying a region, that's somewhat problematic, but we typically associate it with that portion of the country. Not a country, it's a region.
And the freak, I saw you.
Different people.
The freak popped in, he popped out.
I saw you, pop in. Though I know he sometimes has internet issues. So does Bubble. So send in love if you're trying to join us. We're going to stick it at 20 to 30 minutes then.
I think we're going to have Randolph come in.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
I think so.
We're having fun. We're trying to basically ask ourselves, is the Bible a historical textbook? That is what the claim is. So if you feel differently or agree with us, come on and join us because the link is in chat. And there's Randolph Richardson, the one, the only
Godfather.
The Godfather of atheism. I have a deal that you can probably accept, actually, now that I think about it. So we'll bring you in. Randolph.
Hey, Randolph.
How are you? Hope you're doing well. We're asking ourselves, when the rocks cry out, is there historical accuracy to the biblical text? How are you? What are your thoughts?
I gotta say, your introductions are always amazing. It's you and James put on such a great show here. Thank you.
Thank you.
The rocks cry out. Oh my gosh. I see there's already a lot of controversy over the idea of rocks being atheists or agnostics, and no wonder they're crying. They're not getting the attention they need. I don't know. It sounds like nonsense to me. Maybe somebody tipped a rock that had some water on the inside and a crevice on the inside, and it started to drip out, and they turned it into some fantastic story in the Bible. But that'd be the farthest I could go with it, if I was being generous.
Did you get to watch the video that we looked at?
I just tuned in. So
you just tuned in. Yeah. So we reviewed a video from a Christian pastor trying to say that history and archaeology support the Bible. We happen to have an archaeologist on the panel.
Yeah, a good one too.
I will say, so one thing I didn't do is express my view on it. Do I think Sodom and Gomorrah existed? I don't think they did. What I think it is a projection from the Iron Age, when the accounts being written, like in the 5th and 6th century and 4th century BCE, that they were trying to explain the remnants of civilizations that had collapsed during the late Bronze Age. So there were these destroyed cities, and they create a narrative based on the landscape they're observing hundreds of years later. Could there have been some cultural memory back to a time where they either knew there were cities there that were destroyed? I don't know. It's not, again, that's not my area of specialty.
There's a couple cities there that we'll blame gay people for causing it to...
Or some miraculous, incredible story that explains why is there this huge remnant of a city that looks like it burnt to the ground? Well, you don't want to say that it was a bunch of angry Greek Mycenaeans coming in and destroying your area because they're going to settle down and become the Philistines, right? But you got to come up with a story. And that story is going to be God, right? But it could have just have been easily an earthquake that caused a city to have catastrophic collapse, right? And then it's not occupied. We don't know. And each of these cities that have been possibly identified as Sodom or Gomorrah, this is the funny thing too, they all have different reasons they seem to have declined. Some were burnt. Well, maybe that's Sodom. Well, there's a collapse here. Maybe that was an earthquake. Maybe that's Sodom, right? And when I say that, there's no. I mean, there's some archaeologists say yes, they exist. There are, but the field as a body of evidence, there's no definitive scholarship saying the discipline is divided on it. That's the best way to put it. I don't think they actually exist. I think they're historical creations, which may be some remnant in history beyond, but the names probably aren't cities that were associated with antiquity. But whether or not the cities existed at the time they're supposed to existed, they might have, right? So identifying what Sodom is difficult, because are you going to be, if there's a city roughly Sodom's size and shape, is that Sodom? Well, maybe that's your definition and you can place it on that. But are we going to find a nameplate on the wall saying this is Sodom? Probably not, ever, in my opinion. But I could be proven wrong, and that's the great thing about archaeology.
And I just want to say, send in good night, Biddy. Woohoo!
Good night, Biddy.
And, I mean, while we're talking Tangang, I was going to say, we have to pull in the one and only Shark. Oz, we are Midnight Ranting on When the Rocks Cry Out. We are asking ourselves, basically, is the Bible historically accurate?
I always like it when Oz is here.
Well, what are your thoughts?
No.
All right, I think we're done here. Good night, everyone.
I thought he might say that.
This is why I like Oz. He always gives you straight answers.
Doesn't beat
Unlike
around
the
the
Bible.
bush.
He doesn't beat around the burning bush either, I'm sure.
No,
They burn some bushes, though.
Bushes may burn, but they don't talk why they burn. So let's just make sure we're being accurate.
And like the rocks, they also don't cry out, do they?
I've never heard a rock cry out. No.
Yeah.
Well, except for unless we're talking about the wrestler, The Rock. I've heard him cry like a bitch. But other than that,
Ooh, if he hears you say that, he won't
snap.
like that. So that should be interesting.
I'll slap his candy ass.
I heard that in his contracts, his acting contracts, he can never be the loser. He always has to have the winning role.
Yeah, him and Hulk Hogan are the ones that have those type of contracts.
Okay. Yeah, Hulk
I can
Hogan got
only
into some-
imagine Hulk Hogan in his underpants.
I
Marketing,
can
ladies and
only
gentlemen.
imagine.
Now, didn't Hulk Hogan get into some strange controversy that nearly ruined his reputation or something?
Yeah, he
That
dropped the
killed,
N-bomb.
it killed this side.
Oh,
really?
and stuff. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
shit. Well, fuck that up.
Yeah, that's a bad
He
move.
killed the Gawker side about a sex tape too.
Mm.
Published.
Yeah. Well, if you think wrestling's real, the fact they have contracts that determine who's going to be the winner and loser, that should tell you something.
Oh, it's in the movies too. Yeah.
Oh God damn it, Pat! You just ruined my whole childhood and adulthood.
What you
I
mean?
saw
MMA?
a
Gorgeous
video.
wrestling.
I saw a video the other day. It was like, look what happens when I put a rock in the microwave. And it was just like he puts the rock, it goes in there, it goes doot, doot, doot. And he goes, "Rrrt," and he pulls right out a picture of the rock. It's like, all right, you rickrolled us. I'll take it.
If you can smell what the Rock is cooking.
Can you smell what God is cooking?
And
And I'll say,
there went your monetization.
yeah, well, I mean, you know what? I will say, screw the people that, yeah. But nonetheless, we are Midnight Ranting, or When the Rocks Cry Out. We are asking ourselves, you know, they say it's the most biblically accurate textbook in history, which the more we dug was the claim, the more that we found out the Bible was true. Amazing.
I'm sorry. I was taking a really deep yawn when you said that. What was that?
Oh, don't you know, Oz? The more we dig, the more we find out how true the Bible is.
And the more rocks we find, they're all the way down.
The more we dig into what? Shit? Bullshit?
Oh.
We watched a video from a Christian pastor who was putting forth some biblical archaeology and commentary on ancient history.
James, I like your new look. Did you get plastic surgery?
Oh, that's right.
got,
James is
a couple
transitioning. We're becoming twins.
I meant to ask that when I
James
came
can
on.
express himself however he wants to.
That's right.
Oh, we're not saying you can't. I'm just curious.
I was like, wow, there's
Apparently-
there's two Amy's.
Oh my. Double the fun, baby.
For some reason, when I go on my account, everybody says my the sound is bad. They can't hear me. But when I log on with this one, it works fine. I don't know.
Hey, James, double the pleasure, double the fun.
That's right, baby.
Triple the price.
2 Amy's is gives this video, this channel, a whole AA rating, I would say.
Woohoo! That's right. And we are going to send, I normally have my thing just because Tart, there is an event now that Oz has joined going on in October, ladies and gentlemen. Are you looking for better conversations? Are you looking for a better non-believer community, well, then you better come to Better. Tickets on sale now. Tang.live, yo.
That is very well presented, Amy.
Tang.live?
Well, it's important.
Hell yeah.
I cannot shout that event and just Tang Gang Yo more enough because it's important. One of the best things we lose when we lose religion is community, one of the secular things that they hold on to. And so it's important to replace that, and we can do it better. Just saying, little bias.
We have, unfortunately, restrictions here in Canada. We want to do events here too, the community-oriented stuff, and we were just about to embark on it when the pandemic hit, so we had to put it all on hold because we didn't want to contribute to spreading it.
That probably made everything more challenging.
It has, and we're really looking forward to things getting better, but this Delta variant has come out now, and it's looking like it's going to take longer before we can actually do all this stuff. We're following the government regulations here in this province, and they're still kind of saying no for the most part. So you're lucky where you are, Oz, that you can do this stuff.
Well, the Better event.
Don't worry. There's a part of me that is anxious that, like, the last minute we're going to get cut off.
Well, and I'm sure. I have no doubt that you're going to be following safety precautions for health and all this stuff as well. It'd be crazy not to, but it's just. I wish we could be doing the same thing. It's just. It's been tough. And,
I'm sure Oz will say a prayer about it.
If it gets canceled, you're entertaining me for the entire weekend because my flight's non-refundable at this point.
Ooh, baby.
I was gonna say that sounds hot.
Ooh.
You're gonna sit there for a whole weekend and watch Pat drink beer.
Yeah.
There.
Yes.
You're going to need pictures and videos, or people are going to say, or it didn't happen.
Ooh, baby.
Oh, my.
The Pat and Oz show.
I already conned Oz to pick me up at the airport. So
you can call it the Pat and Oz show, ... gently.
I said, I'm supposed to be doing a show with Dr. Josh, and they changed the time, and I got Oz to let me use the studio. It's like awesome.
Yeah, Oz has got things set up real nice right now.
He does. Quality production.
Oh yeah.
Team player. Playing on the team.
Pat, Oz, Waldo.
Waldo's World.
Where's Waldo's World?
Waldo works.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, anybody have any questions they want to throw in the chat at all?
Right. Tag me at Amy Newman. James and I.
We're keeping an eye on it.
So are there any other inanimate objects that cry out in the Bible, or is it just rocks?
Inanimate objects? I can't think of any.
Yeah, just rocks then, I guess. That's funny how it goes all over the place.
I know donkeys talk.
Mountains move. Donkeys talk. Snakes
Mountains
talk.
move.
Yeah. But they don't cry out either.
I can't remember. Do the dead cry out from their graves?
Yes.
The blood cried out. Remember, he said Abel's blood cried out after Cain.
Well, one got resurrected after 3 days or something.
No, Revelation 6:10. Right.
Or as they call it on South Park, resurrected.
Right. I gotta admit though, Christianity has some selling. I mean, if you were going to invent a religion, it would be like Christianity. I think where Christianity fucked it up is they were too patriarchal. Jesus should have been a woman, and then it would be fucking cool.
Like, God should have been a goddess.
Right, exactly. I mean, goddesses were all the thing in the ancient Mediterranean, right? I mean, that's that they would have had me at that, right? And who can't look at a statue of the goddess Venus or Aphrodite and just be pleased at the aesthetics, right?
Much better so.
I was about to say, American pastors
maybe
would
that's
be.
why.
When I look,
No, go ahead,
when I see those beautiful statues, I think of my wife. So.
What were you gonna say, Alex?
You're fucking.
Maybe that's explains
Randolph,
a little bit of
Yeah.
I tell her
watches
she's
the
my
show,
goddess.
obviously. Right, she watches the show. Hi, Miss Randolph. Nice to meet you. He's being a good boy. Jesus. Right.
She's asleep right now, but I'll tell her what you said.
Sure, she is. Sure.
It's almost midnight here.
Woohoo! Well, we are Midnight Ranting.
Randolph,
right on schedule.
Randolph, it's 3 a.m. where I'm at.
It's 3 a.m. here, yeah.
Yep.
All right, well.
Well, we're going to be going for about another 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll be heading into Discord.
Materialist Dan asked, what do you think is the strongest archaeological argument, if any, that Christians use? It would really depend on what they're trying to explain, right? I think it really gets hard until the New Testament. From Second Temple period Judaism forward, though, it's pretty. I mean, the archaeological record confirms a lot of historical, like Jerusalem being sacked, right? By the Assyrians. I mean, these are all incidents that happen, right? So, but then there's problems with not being destroyed, right? Because supposedly under the Assyrians, the walls were all supposed to be pulled down, and we don't have that. So sometimes the archaeological record disproves the biblical account because if you take the biblical account literal, right? Example.
Do we have evidence for those? I've heard Christians say they have evidence for the walls of Jericho, but
sure, I want to see the evidence, right? Because no archaeologist has published that, or at least no one's credible. Again, I'm not trying to sling mud, but if your degree in archaeology says Moody Bible College on it, and they don't have an archaeology program, I tend to doubt that being a good source, right?
What about claims we've heard? Have you heard the claims about the Red Sea and the finding chariots and stuff on the bottom of the Red Sea?
Yeah, that's all been debunked. Yeah,
that's been debunked. Yeah,
wagon wheels from the 15th century aren't 15th century AD are not Egyptian chariot wheels from 1200 BCE. Again, this is what the funny thing is you wouldn't expect to find much evidence of that anyway, but other than metallurgical, right? You get some bronze pieces at best, right? But no, we found wagon wheels. Yeah, no, you didn't. And you just again, I didn't want to mention his name, but Collins is like every apologist out there drags out Collins like he's an archaeologist, and I hate to say it, it's like it is. This is what I'm going to use because I hope you guys will think that it's worth the joke. But when Alex Jones pulls out his doctor, who's a chiropractor, to talk about internal medicine, that's Collins.
Yeah,
he's a charlatan. He's not. He has no training in the field that he's representing himself to have. Right. So.
I read a few years ago that in Israel there was a major effort made to do archaeological research into finding some source of something in the Bible. I forgot exactly what it was, but they kept reporting that they could not find what they were looking for. And I thought, at least, give them credit for being honest that they're not finding something.
Well, so like now I won't say that money doesn't break down walls, but the archaeological community in Israel is extremely it's becoming increasingly academically credible. So they have some very you just don't show up in Israel with a spoon anymore and start digging in the ground. That's our joke that biblical archaeologists dig with a spoon, not a trowel. But the issue is that, there are some places where you can still dig if you have enough money. And so there are some private religious institutions that will pump a lot of money. Now, not all religious institutions aren't doing good digs. There are some, again, I'm just going to give credit where credits were due. There are some, Catholic universities that are doing archaeological digging that is academically credible. They just happen to be at a school that is Catholic in origin, Jesuit, or one of the other major branches. And so they're a Jesuit school digging in the Levant, and their dig is totally legitimate. So just because they're a religious institution, it's the fundamentalist institutions related to proving biblical archaeology to be factual. That's
like
where
the University of Notre Dame. They're a real, academic college. And they do real stuff.
And
it sounds like they genuinely want to prove it, and they want to have real evidence to prove it, and so they're taking it seriously, which is good.
Right. Oh yeah.
And okay. Oh no, Oz, go.
What you guys are leaving out is the Shroud of Turin. Boom, roasted.
Boom, mic drop.
Yeah.
Now you'll have to do a role play. I would say poor on Tangelo, but he brings it on himself.
Pull out the Swiffer wet jet cloth and say, "Here we go. Let's use this as the shroud."
Oh,
the Awoken was.
Patrick, you do not know nothing about the proteins.
There's actually quite a bit of evidence to show that the Proto-Hebrews, right, were polytheistic. They were Canaanites.
And wait, actually, let me interrupt you for 1 second. I just want to read. This is to Pat. How much evidence is there for a polytheistic Israel early on? I have seen evidence that God had a wife named Asherah with the figurines, Asherah with the figurines in sites at Israel. Also inscriptions. Back over you, Pat.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. Yeah, and that's no longer debated scholarship. There are a few apologists saying, "Oh, it was all made up." No. It's central. And we typically talk, right? We typically talk about early polytheistic Israel or Hebrews or proto-Hebrews, right? Because there is a certain amount of political commentary on it. Like, not everybody in academia is willing to be an unabashed, unapologetic atheist, right? Many of them are dealing with constraints that have a certain amount of political correctness associated with them, right? So they use the term proto-Hebrew instead of Hebrew to not offend some sensibilities of the Orthodox Jewish community, right? So just like I try not to use the words AD and BC. It's BCE in academic writing and CE in academic writing. And people that continue to use it, after they've been explained why not to, you have to ask them why they do it. But in certain institutions, they still use the term AD and CE because BC and AD because that's an institutional requirement, or I shouldn't say requirement, but consideration
for religious institution primarily.
This is one of the changes I was making on various Wikipedia pages because some are using the newer style. So I was trying to help bring everything in there, and then somebody started going around and undoing all my changes. So I just kind of enough of Wikipedia, and there's other stuff too. So I just kind of
and the argument
moved off.
It's always been this way, and it's why should we change just because you guys are political? I'm like. Year of Our Lord that's Western Christianity projecting. I mean, and you actually have to think about it. Are we willing to, as an academic discipline, am I going to want to learn 5 different calendars so I can date things in the Hebrew calendar alongside, Persian calendar systems that would want to be used? Because if we push a Western-centric dating system in archaeological records, to what year it is, we're going to have problems. We're going to not include some really important academics. And I think the meeting people halfway was really important. And actually, they met Eastern academics met Western academics way more than halfway.
I think
don't call it. Yeah.
I think Starfleet style stardates are probably the best solution.
But what date are you going to use, right? Like,
yeah,
there's been a lot of,
crazy,
there's been a lot of, right. It gets, which calendar system are you going to use?
As long as there's a clear path to translating it, that's important. Because you look at NASA. There's one, I forgot which one it was, but one of the probes went out in space and something got translated to imperial and back to metric, and it was off by a tiny bit as a result. And then it didn't go where they wanted it to go. It just goes. It's very expensive hardware floating way out in space.
Yeah,
it can't even transmit far enough that we can take advantage of it. It's just gone because of that. So, yeah.
So, Pat, one thing I did want to mention that, and we hear this a lot, like you'll hear it a lot on the theist channels when they're trying to talk about the Bible, is that we know the texts are reliable because of the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the scrolls in there, it's almost identical to what we have today. So therefore, what does archaeology say?
This is the important thing. Well, okay, so I'm.
Oh, were they written in English?
Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, first thing we have is one thing that you people often say, you'll hear said, is they're pretty close, nearly identical. What they don't tell you is they're not identical, right? The Dead Sea Scrolls do not always match up to text that people want to assert as authentic. The other problem is that they show variation in a tradition that people don't want to show. No, Judaism was monolithic. It's all one thing. It shows that it wasn't, right? These are problems. The Dead Sea Scrolls are as much a hit as they are, as much as a miss as they are a hit. And that's the problem, is it doesn't really help the case. But if you want to just count the hits and not the misses, sure, the evidence helps you.
Right. And that's what I think we see a lot of, yeah.
Tunnel vision.
Count the hits, ignore the misses, yeah.
It's tunnel vision.
I mean, there's a lot of really good books written on the Dead Sea Scrolls. I could, there's actually.
Any come to mind if you were going to recommend one?
Well, again, I would point you towards the Dead Sea Scrolls are heavily talked about in several of the Oxford Handbook series. The Bible as Literature is one that has several sections on the Dead Sea Scrolls. The old Oxford Oxford Handbook to the Old Testament has several chapters dedicated to the Dead Sea Scrolls. But Qumran is as much, again, that's what, Dead Sea Scrolls are actually known as the Qumran Cave Scrolls, right? They're as problematic for Christianity and Judaism as they are. Well, Judaism doesn't really care. They're just like, yeah, we'll take them, right? Because, but for Christianity, particularly fundamentalist Christianity, it doesn't help. And the fact that they're written in multiple languages and they always don't agree, even among themselves, and different, that's problematic.
And so,
right.
Finish your last thought. Oh, just wanted to say this is our last 10 to 15 minutes. So if you want to ask your archaeology questions to Pat, now is the time to get them in. We are asking ourselves, do rocks cry out, ladies and gentlemen? Well, really, we're saying, is there a sturdy foundation for the Bible being a historically accurate textbook? Don't think we're getting lukewarm answers. I don't know. I don't think the skeptics are being won over, but who knows? You never know, folks.
I mean, it's like they see like one or two things that seem to match up, and then they extrapolate from that. Oh, wow, the whole thing has been confirmed. It's all, it's all literal history.
Well, show me a talking rock, and I'm going to want to poke and probe at it and try to verify.
Sure you would, Randolph.
Talking.
Oh my!
Randolph is famously known for when asking for evidence of God, he said he wanted to be God for a week.
No. Just wanted key characteristics for a fortnight.
A few.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
Not all of the characteristics. Only omniscience and omnipotence. I was explaining that if their deity was to grant me those two characteristics for the course of about a fortnight, that would suffice for proving to me that the God is real.
You don't need omnibenevolence. Just
I don't need all that other stuff. But I tell people, like, they say, why do you need both of those? I say, well, for omnipotence, I want to be able to test things out, and I want the omniscience to make sure that I do it without messing up the universe.
So I think we have a question for the panel. Also sending love out to our Twitch stream from Static Wolf. One question I have is, all religions are based off a main one.
The question, okay.
Let me put it back up. Oh,
Static Wolf 78. One question I have is all real. Oh, you just read that out. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I don't think that they're all based off one main one. They're all independent.
Yeah, like there's Chinese religions, and there's all these isolated continents right off the bat that religions developed separately on them. So I think that's probably one of the most compelling arguments for it. But the thing is, at some point, somebody sat down and created a religion. Maybe it gradually formed a little bit at a time throughout society and became a bigger thing, and somebody amalgamated these things, and then, that'd be my guess. And so if one person can create it, why can't others in other places also create it,
We talked a lot about that on our last Talk Skeptic with the human origin myths and the similarities and differences and how they traveled through the ancient world.
Okay.
I think probably one of the most interesting things is that we do have a pretty robust archaeological and anthropological and in some cases historical record to kind of show that in regions that were isolated culturally, they developed a unique, religious framework. Sometimes, even though it was uniquely developed, it mirrors a lot of other systems, right? In the Mediterranean, what we see a lot of is blending and cultural transmission of belief and basically projections of belief. Again, the Noah flood myth is a perfect example. It's brought from Mesopotamia into the region and then is included as part of the Hebrew mythical tradition, right? So that's important, but the answer is yes and no. In some places, religion can be its own thing and unique to that region because there's no other contemporaneous people and societies around that they would emulate from. But even then, you may have these really far-reaching, like we see that in the again, not my area especially, but we see in the Polynesian islands, right? More remote, but still cultural sharing and blending, right? So, again, the theme in human and anthropological models is cultures share, but where they can't actually have contact, you can't share if you don't have contact, right? So the more contact, typically the more sharing, the less contact, the less sharing. So the answer is yes and no to your question, because I had to do the academic thing. Never straight answer.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, but keep on sending your questions in. We are asking ourselves about biblical history, theology, and just having some fun. Randolph, you look inquisitive.
Yeah, you're very good at reading people. I wish I was that good at it. Pat, I'm wondering if you're familiar with the Zoroastrian religion and its history. Yeah, and I've heard people say that quite a bit of it was brought over into Christianity, but I don't know how true that is.
Well, there's a lot of people that think that there was heavy influence into Judaism, right? So by second order, that would mean that just Judaism was affected by an Eastern Persian religion.
So it would be an indirect route.
Well, no, but then later you have the Roman influence because the Romans were importing Zoroastrian beliefs into their own pagan system, right? So like the cult of Mithras and others, they're Eastern religions, although it's different than Zoroastrianism. But there were these models brought in even during the Christian period because the religion existed at the same time, right? So there's a fair amount of evidence to show both before and after the Christian movement that there was some level of conflation between the two beliefs.
Well, interesting.
One thing we've heard, we've heard it several times, is the prophecies in the Old Testament, but actually it turns out a lot of times, and maybe you can point out to an example where a prophecy was added after the fact to make it look like it was part of an original text. After an event already happened, they put it in and made it look like a prophecy, so as if it was there before the event happened.
Yeah. Exactly. And that was really common in the ancient world, man. This is like, people are like, well, no, really. Yeah, it was not that.
Like after a city fell, you'd go back, take the text out and write a add to it and say, this city will fall, make it look like a prophecy.
Well, right. I'm not saying we can't demonstrate it in every case, but we have some evidence to suggest it occurred a few times, so we can't say it didn't happen. It wasn't a possibility in more than those situations, right?
Mm-hmm. Just saying. Also, hey Ian, but not only that, but we are streaming not only to YouTube, not only to Twitch, but you can find our Skeptic and Ranting Facebook page. That's right. We have a community Facebook page that also houses the streams, but you can also post those dank memes on there as well. And all right, we got another question from Twitch. Static Wolf asks, what's your thoughts of the Book of Enoch?
Enoch is a knock. No, sorry.
I really don't have any. You mean, is it a legitimate text that's inspired by a divinity? No, I don't. But I don't believe any text is inspired by a divinity. It is a reflection of a cultural movement, that originated, in the 2nd century BCE and was influential on Messianic Judaism prior to the quote-unquote time of Christ. Yes, I think it was a highly influential text to what we consider, the movement of certain sects within Judaism. I don't know if you want to ask me another question, I could maybe narrow that down.
Mm-hmm. That's right, guys. Send your questions in. We got we have 10 minutes. I'll take it to the 3-hour mark, and then we'll go to outros, and then we'll head to Discord. That's right, baby.
Yeah. You see in the Hebrew Christian Bible references to giants in the old. Is that something that was common in other religious texts of the era or proclaimed histories?
Night Oz.
Good night, Oz.
Great men that lived before, right? That was a pretty common theme in antiquity. There were earlier ages. Whether or not they were always giants, that's a different issue. But
people living hundreds or thousands of years.
So I'm not. I've listened to some pretty well and knowledgeable Hebrew scholars that that's their primary area of focus. I think if you really want to talk about giants in the Old Testament, and even some assertions in other books that are related, I think you should really have someone like Dr. Jim on, right? Dr. Majors, because I think he would. I don't know if he'd agree with me, but I don't think he would discount the fact that there are some leading scholars that think that they reference to giants and those that mated with women, or they're really just talking about a group of, you'd call them like an aristocracy, right? Like a group of a noble warrior elite that were referred to in antiquity. That basically means men greater. They're not giants; they're giants among men. Which again, are they being literal giants among men? Are they giants, or are they just people who were head and shoulders above everybody else because they were so much better warriors and leaders and
toes?
People of influence, right? Exactly. So.
Well, I mean, there's a reference in the Bible that they were like grasshoppers compared to them, and that's obviously very hyperbolic because that would put them at like hundreds of feet tall. That's not,
Well, that's how I referred to kings, though, right? Like, I mean, you just look at how a divinity is depicted in it, right? It's all about scale. Your scale is how important you are, right? So I'm a rich guy, but I'm not the king, and I'm standing next to you, my servant, right? You're my slave. You're drawn smaller than me, and I'm drawn proportionally smaller than the king because king's like 10 feet tall if we use my height as my height. But Amy, who's taller than me, is actually drawn smaller than me because she's my slave, right? And then the gods are greater than the king, so the god's 20 feet tall. Does that mean they thought the gods were 20 feet tall? In some cases, yes. But the art represents even sometimes social and class distinctions that were portrayed in as descriptions of art. Now, does it hold across board everywhere? No, but typically gods are drawn bigger than kings, and kings are drawn bigger than their subjects. Pretty common trope. So to say the great men are bigger than the small men, absolutely. Because one thing in antiquity that people seem to forget is if I showed up with a bunch of my friends and we had been fighting for a decade and we were all trained soldiers with armor and weapons and knew how to fight, and I rolled into your village where the best weapon you had was a wooden spoon, we're going to seem like gods to you as we slaughter you wholesale.
Yeah.
So, and again, that the Bible's all about slaughtering people wholesale, so I think it works pretty well. A lot of work for a trained swordsman in antiquity.
I think Mark predicted the destruction of the temple after the temple fell to have Jesus make the prophecy correct.
It is weird how that worked out, huh?
And then let's see, we got doorknob head.
Says, what does "when the rocks cry out" refer to? A verse in Psalms. Optional also. What's the deal? Well, spelling the word Psalms as Psalms. Was there a sale on P?
On the letter P's.
On the letter P. Yeah.
I think the rocks crying out is a reference to Luke, right? Jesus talking and saying that if you deny this, then right.
That's the verse that the pastor read at the beginning, yeah. And then the Freak wants to know, could someone explain the Cyclops of the Iliad?
What do you mean explain? Like
maybe just want some insight to it, I suppose.
Insight on the Cyclops? Just kidding. So it's
I see what you did
the
there.
Iliad is a work of fiction, so yeah, thanks. It's a mythical tradition. The Cyclops were, quote unquote, the twisted children of Poseidon, right? Again, it's myth. It's not. It's. No one's explaining.
It's myth.
The giants. Yeah, it's myth. It's. No one, whether or not. I think this is funny. Like, we live in a world like right now. 200 years ago, people thought Bigfoot was real. Like everybody in the United States thought Bigfoot was real.
Yeah, and in Canada they showed them in beer commercials too.
Right. Like, no, but I mean, like, there are things that up until very recently people thought were real that were like the most crazy shit you'd ever heard. But it was real because there was no scientific inquiry to prove them not real.
Mermaids were thought to be real for quite a long time.
Right. This is right. And this is the crazy shit that, like, Cyclops are just, ancient Greek sirens, right? Leading sailors to their death. I don't believe that in the Odyssey that actually happened either. Just mythical tradition.
And all right, guys, I think we should probably start to move into the outros. If you have any more questions, we're going to be heading to the Discord after the live stream is done to interact with the community. But with that, I want to thank all of our guests here as we move into our outros and
unleash them. Send them in.
Unleashing the mimes, baby.
Super straight.
Woohoo! All right, Randolph. We have been midnight rasking. We've been midnight ranting, asking ourselves, when do the rocks cry out? It's so sad. But really, we're just looking at the foundation of the Bible. Is it historically accurate? I hope you had a good time. Yeah. Where can people find you? What are your final thoughts?
I'll start with final thought. I really appreciated Oz's answer because it was just so crystal clear. No, the rocks did not cry out. No, he he answered it the best, I think. I do appreciate what Oz does in these communities. He's promoting atheism in many different ways, and with a lot of really scholarly people as of late. So I strongly encourage people to go to www.tang.live, that's TANG, and take a look at the Atheist Network group. They have some wonderful programs online, and he's been supportive of my efforts as well. So you can accuse me correctly of having some bias there, and I'll wear that. I'll wear that on my chest, no problem. To find out what I've been involved in, you can always take a look at my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Randolph Richardson. That's spelled RANDOLF Richardson. And I'm been neglecting the channel a little bit lately. I haven't been posting any new videos recently, but I do intend to get back to that fairly soon.
Studio done?
Sorry?
Studio done yet?
No. The studio is for the True North Talk program primarily, and that's you can find out more about that at www.truenorthtalk.ca. And thank you, Amy, for putting the links up on the screen.
Absolutely.
There is a link on that website to the YouTube channel as well.
For Neil the 604 Atheist, right?
Yeah, Neil the 604 Atheist is also a very good friend of mine, and we donate blood together every 2 months. And he also will be co-hosting with me on this True North Talk Atheism call-in program. And we won't be prioritizing based on whether a person's a theist or an atheist. We'll just be taking the calls as they come in. But we will try to address the more interesting questions first, most likely. One thing we will be staying away from is politics, because that just is a topic that just does not make people happy, and we want to have an enjoyable show. So that's
it's a loaded topic. It's dangerous.
Which is funny because non-belief somehow draws us all together.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting with the atheism demographic, the not belief in deities demographic, is that where there is a lot of variety in political thought, because there's nothing in atheism that says you need to be political in any particular way. Of course, a political party that is strongly aligned with religious ideals is unlikely to get much support from people who aren't religious. But aside from that, if it's purely political, I don't see any kind of direct alignment there. I do see a tendency for people to go more for the political parties that lean toward freedom and freedom of thought and human rights and things like that. And I think humanism has a lot to do with that. So it'll be, I'm hoping it'll be an interesting show that people will like to call into and will find enjoyable and informative. And we'll be promoting the other atheism call-in programs from ours. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and if people want to reach me on Twitter, I'm at www.twitter.com/Randolph828. Thank
Randolph
you, and James, for hosting this. And it was great to see you again, Pat.
Thanks for coming back, Randolph.
Yeah, it's always nice to chat with all of you, and I appreciate everyone in the audience for tuning in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Randolph.
That's right. Send in love to Oz, who was just on a little bit ago, and send in love to Randolph. And all right, we had, I normally just have a co-pilot, but we had a very snug with three people driving the plane tonight. You could almost call it a threesome, but we're going to hand it, we're going to hand it over to James.
Yeah, I've got metal spoons, a little better than the wooden one Pat mentioned earlier.
Oh my. Yeah, that's how you get a good spanking. But
is that what you were thinking to use it for? Okay.
Oh my.
We have very different thought processes.
We almost had a Socratic gangbang tonight with the three of us. Not quite, but like 80% of the way there. But yeah, great episode. I want to thank you again, Pat, for coming taking the time to walk through this video with us.
Yeah.
Do the rocks cry out? No. Is there good evidence that the Bible, from archaeology and history, that the Bible is true? Not really. Gets a few things right here and there, but then again, just about everything does. So that's quite a low bar to set for a book that you're claiming to be wrote from a deity, is that sometimes it doesn't get quite everything wrong. You know, once in a while, there's something that lines up, and that's indicative of more of ancient man than a all-knowing, all-powerful God being behind this. But it was still very interesting to go through some of his arguments. So thanks, guys, and have a good night. Thank you, Randolph and Pat, Amy.
Thank you so very much, James. Woo-hoo. And all right, woohoo! We brought Pat on tonight because we are Midnight Ranting. We are asking when the rocks cry, but really, we have been told that there is good archaeological evidence that would make the Bible a historically accurate textbook. We really dug deep on that tonight, Pat. I hope you had a fun time. Where can people find you, and what are your final thoughts?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. Thanks for everybody who showed up tonight to watch this, and anybody that may watch it in the future. My final thoughts is there are some things in the Bible that through archaeological methodology, rigorous investigation, can be shown to be credibly documented. But I think that in a large systematic evaluation, the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, that's the only thing I'm going to comment on, largely fails. Time and time again it fails, and the few times it does succeed, those are the ones that are lauded as successes, and the misses or failures are swept away with apologetics or not dealt with at all. Archaeology is an interpretive field. And yes, there is some very rigorous methodology that goes into the examination of ancient sites, whether or not they're landscapes and or actual excavations. But it's not a perfect science because it requires interpretive elements, right? And we talked about that during tonight's show. And that's the problem with archaeology. You can have two people look at something and get different results. And because it's interpretive, there are people that have personal motivations that skew their interpretation to the point of credulity to a predetermined outcome. And that's what we see within the older field of biblical archaeology, which is still brought out by Christian apologetics and flaunted as, we found this and this proves the Bible. A melted stone at an unidentified city does not prove Sodom and Gomorrah. It proves that you have a burnt stone near an ancient city somewhere in the Levant that we have no other evidence to show is Sodom and Gomorrah, right? This is the problem. I personally don't believe Sodom and Gomorrah actually exist within a historical context. Yeah. But I can't disprove it, right? And there may be some cultural memory that actually there is a site. But archaeology tries to do its best. And given that limitation, we try to find things that really aren't explained anywhere else. And where it is written down, we try to truth those finds, ground truth them. And when we can't, we say we can't. And yeah, there's a lot of opinions floating out there, but there are some widely accepted practices and findings in the field that are pretty much foundational now. And some of them have to do with the archaeology of the ancient Levant, and it doesn't really work out the way some people would like to within the Old Testament narrative. And if you want to see any of my writings on my blog, it's Discovering Ancient History at wordpress.com. I gave that to Amy. We should throw it up there. Or if you want to check out my new YouTube channel, which will be showing some of the megalithic sites, that's where we're going to start. Like the first 20 videos, which I'm going to try to get out 1 or 2 a week, are going to cover some of the megalithic sites that I surveyed this summer, with short videos between 3, 5, maybe no longer than 10 minutes. And you can kind of walk around when I walk around with a camera explaining what the site is. Some of them are easier to find than others, and a few of them you may never be able to go to in your life, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't take a few minutes to look at it, because they were important at the time they were built. So thank you for having me, and
thank you, Pat,
all of you for putting up with my ranting.
And Pat also has a book coming out in the next several months.
I just subscribed to your channel, Pat.
Thank you.
That's right. Let's get Pat to 100. Let's get him that sexy name.
Pat's book, Bring Back the Patriarchy. Oh no, that's Claire. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
God, mix the two of them up. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to. Such similar philosophies. No, we love all of our theist friends out there.
I mean, if you're gonna put it out there, just while Amy's getting ready to talk, it's not Bring Back the Patriarchy. It'll be entitled "Betrayed: The Orthodox Subjugation of Women in the Early Christian Church." Just so we get the right title out there.
Yeah, I think everybody knows Pat would not be in favor of restoration of the patriarchy and subjugation of women, but just to make that abundantly clear,
I'm not in favor of it either.
Damn it, I'm going to make a bold statement and say that I am not for that either.
Yay.
Yes. Well, no, it's just like trying to take a bold statement against slavery, even though you would think that there wouldn't be Christians who defend that, yet they do day in, day out. Nonetheless, I want to thank my co-host, James W., along with our special guest host, Pat Lowinger, and our awesome guest panel, Ralph, Randolph Richardson, and Oz, along with our awesome mods who make this stream so great, the people in chat, and all of our lovely viewers who even make this channel possible. Woohoo! If you're feeling fancy, don't forget to like, follow, or even subscribe. Wow! Then hit that bell icon that lets you know and gives you reminders on when our live streams are. After the show, sometimes. It's been getting better, but yeah, it gets wonky. Some people ask, how do you get reminders and all that? Did she really? That's so funny. Oh my gosh, she's probably
Amaretto. That's great.
She probably passed out after, I think she had school today, so she got just done her class and then she did that, then she probably passed out and now she's up. So sending love to Amaretto, though she didn't miss out on all the fun, because after the show we will be heading over to the Skeptic and Ranting Discord server, the link of which is in the description below. So come join us for some more fun. That's right, baby.
More gangbang.
Lastly, if you'd like to help us make even more fun content, we offer some unique community perks for our supporters. So go check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Amy Newman. I am Amy Newman, but we will see you all on the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Amy, would you like some sausage?